Okay, we're going to get started here. Sorry we're starting a few minutes late. We had a work session. We were talking about the Payson economic strategic plan for our growth of our economy here. So I'm Councilman Hewlett. I'm Mayor Pro Tem. Mayor Wright is a CBG meeting, and he'll be here shortly. And he's out trying to get money for us for our roads. So we'll start with the prayer with Councilman Christensen, and then we'll have the pledge by Councilman Linda Carter.
Our dear gracious Heavenly Father, indeed grateful for the opportunity to participate in the political process here today, and ask that we may be guided and directed to do the things that we need to do for this community of Payson, to help it to grow and to strengthen. We say these things in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Will you all stand and repeat the pledge after me, or with me, excuse me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the next item is the consent agenda. Do we have a motion on the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion that we accept the consent agenda for March, I forgot the date, 6th, 2019.
Second.
And you want to include the two resolutions?
Yes, with the two resolutions, sorry.
Okay, we have first and second. All in favor?
Aye.
So, do you want to make a...
I'd like to make a motion that we amend the agenda to facilitate the swim team.
Okay, so we're...
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, great, thank you. So we have our swim team from the Payson High School and Payson Junior High School here today. So we'd just like to recognize them for their great accomplishments. Do you have a spokesman that can tell us what you've done this year, or introduce your... Okay.
Come on, college.
Well, I was trying to get one of the kids. What, do you want me to stand up?
Yeah, come up here on the microphone. Maybe introduce them, tell us what they did. Have them come up here and tell us what they did.
Yeah, come on up. You guys want to just stand right up here? All right, so this is a portion of our girls swim team from the Payson High School. This year we had 43 swimmers total. And
girls and just girls?
Half of those were girls. So
okay.
We had 18 girls and whatever 43 minus 18 is with boys. And so this year our girls team took, overall our team took second at region. Our girls were third place at region, which is a huge deal because we had a tough region and we keep moving up. We're excited about that. And then the reason we're here tonight is these girls actually took academic state. So they take all the varsity teams that do a winter sport, not just swimming, all winter sports, including basketball, drill team, and swim. And we had the highest GPA overall for a varsity team. So that was pretty exciting.
Yeah, that's great. Do you want to introduce your name? Tell us who you are.
So we have Katie Jensen. Wave. Liz Waters.
Shake your hand.
What's it after?
Alora Unica. Emma Higginson. Alexis Nakos. Amy Blake. And Maggie Hunter.
Do you want to tell them what the comparison between the girls and the boys team?
Yeah, we were pretty excited because we won, what was ours, girls? 3.9? 3.92. I think ours was 3.92 overall GPA, and the boys team that won, so they were not from Payson High School, they were from, theirs was it was 3.7 something.
I don't know, all I know is ours was higher.
So the boys will be working for you.
That's right.
So I have a question for you. Where did you go to practice during the winter?
Springville. We practice swimming in Springville, so we drive, we have carpools that take us to Springville. We practice every day. That's one reason we took some big steps this year with our swim team, is because we were able to at least practice every day, because until now, we've been practicing only on B days, so only every other day, which is real hard to compete against a team that's practicing every day when we only get every other. This year we stepped up our game and we were able to practice every day, which has been exciting. And then, yeah, so we go to 5A this coming season, so that's gonna be exciting.
So, great, congratulations.
What I'd like to do is, we're gonna maybe have you come around and shake everybody's hand, and I'm gonna give your coach a certificate for you guys, and then we're gonna have some pictures, so.
Why don't we just go over there and shake their hands?
Shake, okay, good idea.
If there are any parents that want to come up and take pictures, you're welcome to come up.
Turn around. This is my good side for the camera. Good job. Good. Nobody wants a picture of us. Oh, there's some over there. We got some.
We just need the girls to turn around.
You're embarrassed. Yeah, you should have been here last time when there was clear full of high school boys.
Perfect, that works. Let me put John.
Hold on.
Okay.
Cover up.
I know, sorry.
Probably embarrassing a daughter, I'm sure.
It's okay, she's used to it.
Yeah, she is.
My love. Been used to it, yeah.
Goodbye.
Jay, congratulations.
We're gonna dismiss this swim team when they wanna leave, because, and besides doing good grades, they're going to do a service project right now, so. Anyway, thank you very much. Okay, it's time for staff and council reports, public forum first. Oh, public forum, excuse me. So now's the time for public forum. If anybody wants to talk about anything that's not on the agenda that's open for a comment from the public, we'd like you to come up and state your name and then try to keep it to 3 minutes if you have something you'll say. So we invite you to come up now.
Do I have to go up?
You gonna do something in public forum?
Yeah. Well, because you can do it. What?
You can do it in council.
You did a council report?
It's dealing with the general plan going out West Mountain. Because there's about 600 acres out there right now, people who want to develop. Okay.
Okay, seeing nobody wants to do a public forum, we'll now go to staff and council reports. So staff.
Mayor and council, I'll be brief because you'll hear a lot more about water. But the water outlook is obviously good from the conference we just came back from. So, well, that, like I said, Steve and those guys from Payson on Loose will be addressing that here in a few minutes. But we've just been busy, obviously, trying to address potholes and water leaks and everything else that we normally do.
We started giving potholes street addresses? Is that what I just heard? You said we've been addressing them.
Fixing it.
Oh, I know we had some big ones.
We even got one request from the city manager for amendment. He lives here to so people let us know when they're out there. Yeah, Water looks good, at least right now, hopefully we keep it that way and it doesn't come down too fast.
What is the temperature up there right now, do you know?
I don't know, I could look at Snowtel and look at how, because it's usually, 15, 20 degrees cooler, but not, it's obviously starting to melt, so. With it being in the 62.
Yeah.
So.
Pretty quiet out there today, so let's go to council reports again. Teresa?
So, I've had several people approach me that would like to sell their property, and I know Jill has talked to several of these different people. And I think we haven't addressed doing a plan out there, but I think we maybe need to start looking at doing a plan out there because there are people who want to sell. They're older, they're like in their 80s, some in their 90s. Some, their parents have died, and personally, I don't want to see a developer come in and buy all this or half of it and just go out there and without any plan and just say, okay, this is what we're going to do. Because we don't have a plan, we need to kind of make it like a little village out there. Like we need to have what they're doing up here. We need to look at what they're going to do out there because right now it just sits as ag. But I've already had several of them had developers have approached them. So I'm thinking we need to go ahead and have them even look into that. I know it's going to cost us more money, but I would rather have that already planned than the developer come in, or 5 or 6 developers come in and get together and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. We need to know what needs to happen out there. So I said I was going to talk to you about it. I just didn't because you know. But yeah, Jill's had them in her office too. So, and they've called me, and like I said, several of them have had the developers come and talk to them now. So it's
So is it a positive experience? Is it?
it's a very positive. And we have
We're worried that we're not going to have control over the situation.
That's
or-
I want to have the control over the situation. I don't want a house like you go over to. It makes me feel sad. You go to Mapleton, and it's just house, 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 and they still have to drive to Springville or to Spanish Fork to do anything, to get their gas, to get a gallon of milk. We want to have it.
How far out is the master plan to show that then?
It's just how far out is it, Jill?
Will that be included?
Well, there's 2 different levels. So the general plan, which will be done by the end of this year, is going to have general land uses and we'll have utility information. But is what Teresa is hearing and what I am hearing from them is they want to be to that next level, more like a specific plan for the areas, so it's a little bit more refined of the land uses, because right now we're just showing that land use that it'll be residential at a range of this to this.
Right.
Is not contemplating like a village center out there that you could accommodate commercial in the future so people can have their services closer to home instead of having to travel into town. So
Can
we're
we
not at
schedule a
that,
work session and kind of look at that?
but we might need to,
From
and I
that.
think that's why Teresa's bringing it up, is because some of the comments or the feedback that we're getting from these large landowners, they're wanting to be to the next step. And we're saying, well, we're working on this step right now, but they're wanting to go to the next level. So that can be exciting, but then in the same sense, it's, if we don't know some of the information up front, are we going to find ourselves lacking information
Yes.
once that general plan is adopted? So
So-
we do need to talk about that more.
Is this land that's not even annexed?
Some of it is and some of it is not.
Right.
But it's right next door
But
to the
it's
stuff that's
immediately
not.
adjacent to
Right.
the city boundaries.
Right.
I'd like to sit down as a work session and look at a map, so that we at least have started to fill it out, so when they come in and say, hey, this is the process, this is where we're headed, you know.
So every now and then West Mountain has a few people that talk about incorporating into their own town. Is that still happening?
Well,
Or is that dead?
this is what I'm worried about, is I don't want to see that happen. And so these people that I've talked to, you know, they want to be in Payson and they want to have it developed correctly. I mean, they do want green spaces. They don't want to just come in and put a house, you know, and just take up 500 acres, 600 acres of homes. They want to have it so that they can stay out there. But if we don't do something, and this has always been my fear, they're going to go ahead and you know, try and de-annex, and the people that aren't do the 5 1/4 acre pieces, because we're talking, these people, seriously, they're in their 70s to 90s, and their kids don't want to come in and farm it, and they can't make money leasing it, and so we gotta let them do something. Either we put a plan out there, or they're gonna do their own.
Okay.
And thank you, Brian, that was an awesome presentation. I appreciate that.
We have a
We have a really good group that's working on this. They have a lot of good ideas. It's not me, it's this group, so.
Thank you, group, if anybody's here.
I don't have a lot this time. I'll echo what Teresa said. That was a fantastic meeting, and I think residents should know that we're looking not only at our general plan, but we're looking at future business and commercial and all of those things. I think it's kind of an important thing with what we're doing. So maybe the mayor should write an article for the Payson Chronicle.
That would be Amanda.
Or Amanda will write it and the mayor will sign it.
I just have a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. Finally, that it's dried up. I appreciate the work that's going on at the pickleball. It's looking a lot better, and I'm excited to see that develop. Have a lot of people ask what's happening there. And it looks so much better, so I appreciate that. Speaking of looking better, I came to that dinner the other night. What was it? The Interfaith Council. The Interfaith Council. And it was very nice. Bought a pie that the apples hadn't been peeled in the apple pie. It was strange. But anyway, I made some trips, and I often do, to the restrooms here, and they look so good. And it just comes to my mind. I hope I'm not embarrassing Tracy, but it just comes to my mind over and over again. We're making these improvements here. There are so many people up at that golf course that use those restrooms that are atrocious. We need to look into giving some money to them to repair those restrooms up at the golf course and out on the course. Those need to be repaired. What did you mouth?
What?
What did you say?
I don't dare say.
Okay, I knew. You called me crazy.
No.
I think.
It's not about.
No, think about scouts. Nature.
Anyway, I think that would be something that we need to look into in the budget too, is to help them out up there. There's a lot of people that use that, and a lot of people that come from out of town, and we really need to do that. And that's all I've got.
I went to the Interfaith Council fundraiser too, and there was quite a few people there, but it's interesting that we had a couple of city employees that bought a lot of pies and paid a lot of money. So congratulations to those city employees that spent a lot of money there. So
They did.
that's all I have.
She was having a party, so it worked out really good. Selection for them to choose from.
I don't have a ton of stuff. I'm excited to hear the pickleball courts are moving forward as well. I think that'll be a great asset to the city. Also, as far as the golf course is concerned back there,
I'm listening.
how's the RV park coming? Is it going to be up and running soon, or?
That goes under Kent/Travis's department. It's been too wet for them to work on. My understanding is as soon as Kent can get up there, it'll go pretty quick. But it's fairly dry. You know, it's drying out, but it seems like it just gets dry, and then we get a little more snow or rain. So yeah.
Right. Well, I'd like to see that up and running, and maybe some of those funds and redo those bathrooms, make them a little bit more.
I've actually
RV
had,
park
I
friendly.
think I've had about 6 calls. We've been open since Monday, 9 holes, and I've had 6 calls since then wondering if our RV park is open.
Yeah, we're missing a lot if
Yeah.
we don't get
It
it.
wasn't the same person 6 times, was it?
It could, I don't know, with the size of families around here, it could have been, you know, but,
Yeah.
no.
And then I mean, my brother, he likes to go snowmobiling. I don't ever get to make it up in the mountains, and he says there's more snow than he's ever seen up there. Says the street signs are just peeking out of the top of the snow at this point in time. So, drifts that go across the road, says it'll never melt. He doesn't think so. But anyway, so it's good to know that that's there. But on that same note, makes me kind of concerned. Like Petite Neat Creek, some of our smaller tributaries are still being ignored. I know we've worked the big ones over, but let's not forget those little ones, because that is where the street runoff runs to and overflows into those. And if somebody up above has left all their branches in there and it pulls its down, and I'm guilty, mine's not 100% clean, but I got in there and worked on it for a couple of hours the other day and moving rocks so that the water flowed better. So I think those little tiny streams need to be cleared out so that we don't have problems that spillways into the roads. But otherwise, it's looking good. Appreciate all that everybody does.
Along that, real quick, I've only had a problem once, but I remember a couple of years ago when the ditches were cleaned out that were in people's property. It was just all piled up and left in their yards. Just make sure we clean it up and remove it from their property.
Okay, thank you, staff and council. Do we have any scouts here that are here for, Kay? Linda, you want to take care of that? And if you bring your name up, and they'll get your name, get your certificate too. But we'll turn the time over to Linda.
Okay. Looks like we've got one scout. Good. Come on up and I want you to tell him your name. Right over here. There you go. Okay, come on up here. So your name's Max Shirts. Good, nice to meet you, Max. Let me just tell you one thing that we do when we have the scouts here. We like for you to tell everybody out here what you like about scouting. What's your favorite thing? Everybody hearing? Okay, good. Sitting around the fire, great. And you love your scout troop, and you do a lot of service for people? Good. That's something you ought to bring up too, the things that you could do to help other people. Well, thanks, Max. And they'll have a certificate for you here.
Max, you want to come around?
Oh, yeah, I want you to shake hands with the council.
Go around the front.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming.
All right, let's go.
Okay, they'll get your certificate here in a minute. Now we have a report on Tabitha's Ways. Who's here to do? That's good. Oh, excuse me, discussion regarding water strategy. Got a couple of people here for that.
Mayor and Council, just quickly introduce them and let them do it. Steve Sobey and Steve Jones are here with Hanson Out and Loose. They're our consultant doing our water master plans, and then they're also helping us with the floodplain appeal and a couple other things. So they're definitely a lot of big help for it. But I just encourage you, if you have any questions, you know, while you're doing the quick presentation, just, you know, ask them while they're going. So you don't forget what it is. But I'll just turn the time over to them and let them do it.
So I'm here to answer your questions about water. So we're as Travis said, we're in the midst of studying your water system, assessing it and doing master planning so that we can answer some questions about utilities and how your system will develop. We put together a little PowerPoint to help talk about a few things, but if you have questions, please ask them and I will try to answer them about water. So we're going to talk about, real quick, water rights, water sources, water quality, water storage, transmission, and then the condition of your water system facilities. So here's a lot of numbers. I wanted them all in one place so that you can look and contrast and compare them. But starting from the top, let me try to explain them, and then you can ask questions. So some of these are based on models. Some of these are facts from just how much supply you have, et cetera. So it comes from different sources, but they're as accurate as we know at this point in time. So the safe groundwater yield, that means how much water is entering the groundwater underneath Payson. And the amount that could safely be extracted through wells. If you take too much out, then you might take too much water and your ground will start subsiding. You don't want to do that. So that's what we call it, the safe groundwater yield. That's our estimate of how much is available to extract in any 1 year. And then your next number, dry year spring supply. This is the amount in a dry year, which we have to plan for because that happens every once in a while. We can't just even rely on the average year because then you'll miss the boat when it gets a little bit drier. So that's 1,230 acre feet. And then total drinking water supply, that's our groundwater, which is drinking water quality, and the springs are drinking water quality. So adding those together, the total supply is estimated at 8,720. There's your drinking water. The only other way to get more drinking water is to either import it from somewhere else or import it from somewhere else. There's no other way to do that. So,
Can you purify water though? Is there surface water that you could make drinkable?
Yes, you'd have to have a treatment plant, and there is a treatment plant being discussed, and that's through Central Utah Water Conservancy District. They've actually already bought land in Salem.
Oh.
We are actually doing a study for Central Utah to look at the feasibility of that. That water will cost money. And it actually...
Is that something that you'd have to pay for when we don't need it, to get it when we do need it, kind of a deal?
It would be, a lot of cities in the north are dealing with this, where they have their own supplies that they're costing like $100 an acre foot versus this treated water that costs a lot more. But going way out in the future, but we're saying 50, 60 years, eventually it could be cheaper because it's less expensive to use surface water and treat it than to extract it out of the ground. Water's heavy and it costs money to extract it out of the ground. So those are things being looked at.
What is our current water consumption of that 8,700 acres?
2781 on the bottom there.
I was going to ask
There
this
you go.
question too, but.
You get an A. Good job. Yes, so the existing drinking water demand, 2,700
So
acre feet.
what's the difference in gallons and acre feet?
So it's a.
I know it's
a big number.
0.743, I know
basically-
that's what it is.
So
but what-
basically, if you can think of an acre, 1 foot on a whole acre is, that volume is an acre foot.
Which is about 150,000 gallons, right?
It's a lot more than that.
Was it
It's
a million
300
something?
It's a lot of gallons.
That's what I'm trying to get at is the gallons, because like, I know when I irrigate, I use on an acre foot basis,
Yes.
but then I'm trying to compare it to what Payson uses on a gallon basis.
So it's about 325,000 gallons.
Is 1 acre
For
foot?
1 acre
1
foot.
acre foot.
I was trying to rack my brain from way back in the day.
Yeah, it's a lot of water. So and if you look at the next item down, potential 2060, so you see the existing drinking water demand, that's what you used this last year, 2018. And the potential 2060 is projected, and that's just a projected number, 7,704. So theoretically, you have enough water underground and in your springs to cover you. So the real reason of, I guess, planning for surface water treatment is if for some reason you want more redundancy or there becomes a problem with water quality.
How many housetops were you looking at for 2060?
Probably, that's a population of around, again, this goes back to the planning that's currently being done, but about 70,000 people.
And drinking water is just that doesn't take into account like anything like manufacturing might use. That's all secondary water.
No, anything that uses the drinking water, which you do have some large industrial usage in your
Right.
city.
Well, that's what I was wondering.
If
Is
they're
this-
using the drinking water, then it is counted as drinking water.
And you've counted for growth in that manufacturing area too, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So this is, so we've done all these watt tests to make sure that we're recharging our wells?
Correct. That's that safe yield. That's what we think. So you haven't, there's been, like, if you go to Spanish Fork, they can actually draw down the ground level, the groundwater level with their own wells. Now, it's, we haven't seen that as much here, but you're kind of in a nice little pocket where there's a lot of groundwater recharge. That's a great number. In fact, you can almost meet your future demand with that number. However, that's the whole number for your whole city. So currently, there's other people that use that water and have water rights for that amount.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask. So you're talking about safe groundwater yield, that's just for Payson, but what if
Total.
if other communities are pulling out of that?
They are, but this is for your area underneath your city, but there's other people that have groundwater rights, farmers.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering is,
That's all
have you
part of
taken
that.
you've taken into consideration, so if we were to go out there and start putting 5 1/4 acres and they all have to have their own wells, that's what I was wondering if they would still stay recharged or if, because we don't water the way we used to water, we now sprinkle, we don't flood irrigate, which is a lot of people like north of me,
Right.
you know, they're having to dig new wells to go way farther down
Yep.
because that, they're not
There's
recharging
groundwater recharge
aquifers.
isn't there.
It's true.
What about like water banking? Is that something that we need to, am I jumping ahead or?
Potentially, or
Potentially.
recharging, artificially recharging, that's a potential. Like during the winter, you can use your spring water and recharge. It's drinkable and you can recharge your wells potentially. So there's options, but you will have to work on that. So going forward, there will be farmland that turns into houses. The thought is that groundwater that was being used for irrigation will turn over to the city for drinking water. So that's part of the unknown part. Is that really going to happen? Is that going to be available to you?
Well, that's it, is like when you get down there is how big is the aquifer that you're pulling from? That's,
Yep.
I wondered the same thing, because I have a large well, but it's still, you know, if I were to sell out, is how many homes is that really gonna take
Right.
care of?
But there's another thing. If you look down now when we talk about surface water, there's actually quite a bit more surface water. So one potential is those using irrigation, the groundwater for irrigation, maybe give them a surface water solution and preserve the groundwater that's of high quality as drinking water.
So we kind of need to look at that as the people who are using culinary water to water their lawns, you need to go to P&I instead of using.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, or even farmers that have a nice well, potentially making sure that turns over to drinking water and give them a nice solution.
I know that the fruit growers use a lot of water at harvest time to prep and process their fruit. So that's a changeover. If you switch to houses versus trees, you're gonna put that water into a house.
So now when we look at surface water, 7,000 acre feet, that's your dry year surface supply. You also have, so you yourself have about 860 currently. So the 7,000 is what's available in the area for not just the city, but other people. There's this CUP Utah Lake System water. If you didn't know, the city of Payson signed a contract several years ago about getting ULS water, or water from Strawberry Reservoir. Actually, that would be so this 5,000 acre foot, you basically have already bought, and the pipe is coming. You have about 6 to 8 years before that, basically that contract starts, and you have a mortgage to pay over the next 40 years beyond that. That is the water that if Central Utah builds a treatment plant, they'll actually, it doesn't come with water, you would already be paying for this water, and they would treat this water for you to be drinking water quality. Otherwise, when it comes in 6 to 8 years, you're gonna have to figure out some way to get it into your system to use it as secondary or PI water initially. Continuing on down, Highline Canal has about 3,000 acre feet. Currently in the Payson area, there's about 14 or almost 15,000 acre feet being used of strawberry water. And a lot of that is the irrigators that are using that, not you. But you do use a small amount of that. And then existing Payson City secondary water supply, meaning your physical water supplies currently are about 3,000, a little over 3,000 acre feet. Now the potential, if you add everything up, including irrigation water, farmland turning into homes, and water coming to the city, potentially there's on order of almost 27,000 acre feet available. Now if you look down at the bottom, potential secondary water demand, clear out to 2060, is only 8,000. So there's actually a lot of water, and your bigger problem will be organizing things. You've got ULS water that you have to pay. It'll be rather expensive. You got to figure out how you're going to pay for that, how you're going to use it. But you have all these other potentials that could be coming also. And dealing with that, telling the irrigators who want to now develop their land, what do they do with their water? Do you even have room for it coming to the city? Do you even need it? Those are all types of things that you'll probably need to understand and start making decisions sooner than later so that you don't find yourself boxed in the corner.
Well, some of that water could be leased, right?
Correct. Yeah. So does that make sense, all those numbers?
I guess compared to other cities, we're probably looking fairly strong water rights, aren't we?
You're looking very good water rights wise, and I'll talk about water rights here. Water rights wise, an actual physical supply, the closest is that drinking water, making sure you have enough drinking quality water available to you in the future, but the numbers show that you should be fine if you plan correctly. So what you need to work on is how do I get that to the new areas of development, and where do we want to get those pipes first? Because there's a lot of development going on, or potential development going on, but all those areas need a pipeline. Storage needs to be put in place both on the PI system and the drinking water system. So that's your main upfront concern is physical facilities to get the water to the development. So here's groundwater rights. Average annual groundwater recharge, we already talked about that. So it's 15,000. About half of that is safe to extract. So that's available groundwater for pumping in the Payson City area. Your Payson City that you own, Payson City groundwater rights, is about almost 6,000 acre feet. The total water rights in the Payson City area is about 20,000. And then the total groundwater rights that are pending approval, so that's in addition to the 20,000, is 10,000. And now who can start doing math? So there's 30,000 acre feet of water rights in the Payson City area, and there's only 7,500 acre feet available. That's a problem. So
And it's not available because we don't have storage for it.
it's physically, there's not that much water being recharged, and there's not that much water that can be extracted. So that you call it over allocation. There's more water on paper than there is in the ground.
That's what I was.
Yeah.
So the pending ones, who's that the?
Those are ones that people have turned in an application to the state engineer, and they're waiting for them to rule approval.
But is it one organization's most of that?
No, it's several different entities. So currently, right now, your well capacity is about 4,000 acre feet. So that's how much, if you turn on all the wells, that's about how much today you can extract out of the ground, which is a good chunk of the 7,500 already, and you've got a good 20,000 acre feet of water rights out there in your city. So again, we need to start looking at the numbers and making decisions and how to rectify this. And then there's other people looking at this regionally and trying to come up with ways of working together and managing the groundwater better. Okay, then when we go to the surface water, there's a similar story, but not quite as ominous, because there is surface water available, especially in the average or the wet years. But Payson City, you own about 1,400 acre feet of surface water. Water shares, so those are the canal shares that come from, mostly from Spanish Fork River, but also there's some from the Strawberry Reservoir. That's about 2,850. And then irrigation company water rights, so that's the irrigation company that the canals that run through your city. That's another additional about 5,302. And then other private surface water rights in your city is about 9,645. And then there's strawberry water. We already talked about that number. There's strawberry water that comes down the Highline Canal, and that's about 14,828. So a total surface water right of about 36,667. And the difference between this and the groundwater is in most years that's actually available. So there is water there. Now in a dry year, different story, but it's probably about 80% of that or so. So there's more surface water available than there is groundwater when you compare water rights, paper water to physical water. So these are just some things to remind you about your ULS contract. So the water that you purchased from the federal government that Central Utah is building the pipe right now. It's a valuable source because it's stored. The river water, it just comes, and if it's a wet year, it just goes downstream and you don't get to use it. The water that is stored in the Strawberry Reservoir, you can hold over to another year. So you can take a wet year and hold it over to a dry year. So that makes it fairly valuable. Then also it'll come in a pipeline that'll be high pressure. So you won't have to, if you plan right, you won't have to pump it. You can tap into that pipe and it can go up the hill to a reservoir, and you've gotten it at a much cheaper cost than if you had to pump it out of the ground or pump it up the hill. So that's an advantage. So as I say, the block notices, you actually purchased more than 5,124. You actually sold some of that for money for your PI system when you put that in, if anybody remembers that. So now you're down to 5,124. The cost will probably be on the order of about $350 an acre foot. And you can look at that as kind of your mortgage payment. That'll be $350 per acre foot, and that'll be a per year cost.
And we're paying what, 60 right now?
Probably less than 100 if you include all the maintenance costs and energy costs, etc.
Are you talking strawberry water?
Yeah,
That's the average cost that we're paying for water.
It's about 115 the Highline, and then I think we have
From the Strawberry.
about $10 for strawberry, so it's about 120.
Yeah. Now, if you ask people up north, anybody would love to have this water at that price because they're paying a lot more for it. So comparatively, it's a great deal, but then again, compared to your sources, maybe it's not such a great deal right now. But I think if you look long term, this is pretty valuable water that you'll want to put in the right spot and take advantage of it. So you need to construct facilities to accept this water. So that would be a tragedy if now you have to start paying for it and it just goes on down the pipe or somebody else uses it because you don't have the facilities to use it. But we're working on a master plan, so hopefully that'll be up and ready before the pipeline comes. So ponds, turnouts, valves, delivery pipes, etc. There's some conditions of the contract. There's some conservation requirements that we could probably make sure that you're meeting. You can take your own strawberry water through the pipeline and just pay a maintenance fee, a pretty small maintenance fee, probably $15 to $20. So that's a great deal. That's part of the contract.
Plus, what you would get in your full acre foot, 12 inches and not just 10 inches.
Well, okay, so in addition to your 5,124 acre feet, you can also have them deliver your strawberry water that you pay $115 for, plus $15 for them to carry it in the pipe, and then you get it at pressure. that you could take advantage and send it on up the hill to a higher pond.
So I got a question on that.
Yeah.
As I've heard about this a little bit, so if the CUP carries the strawberry water for us,
Yeah.
basically if it's in a pipe, we're gonna save about 30% from evaporation. That, from what I've heard, the contract says that CUP is gonna keep all that extra water. We don't get that 30%, so basically we're giving them.
Yeah, return flows, there's a little return flows. There are some stipulations that, yeah, you don't get the extra water.
And what I'm talking about, a 30% on canal, I just heard the other day that going down the Pro or Spanish Fork River, they lost 17% of the water there. So we're looking at loss of about 50% of our water between those two systems. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yep. There's a stipulation that you can't use debt for this mortgage payment on this pipeline, so keep that in mind. Somehow it's going to be paid for without using debt because they see it as already debt, so they don't want you to have debt to pay for debt. And let's see, the price, $350 times 5,000 acre feet.
It's about 1.8.
1.75
Yeah.
million.
So that's going to start pretty soon, and you should have a plan for that.
So I need to ask this question again. Will we get the full acre foot, or will we only get, you know, like right now, we only get 10 inches for each foot, and so
Right.
we don't get the full acre foot.
No, so they will deliver, my understanding is they will deliver that full amount to you
Okay.
through the pipe, because it's so much more efficient in the pipe, there are a lot less losses. And yeah, you're right. So you should get your full 5,000 acre feet. Now, there's some other stipulations. You can delay up to 10 years. So if you add the 6 years and 10 years, so you could delay up to 16 years, but then that just raises your yearly payment because you still have to finish the payment in the same amount of time. As if you were to start.
What does the cost go to after the 40 years?
I'm sure that there'll be some maintenance costs on top of that.
So it's just, that's like forever, that's not.
Just as a comparison, so I've worked for quite a few cities, but up north, like Saratoga Springs, currently they pay Central Utah $16,000 an acre foot for the upfront capital costs, and then they pay about $400 an acre foot just for getting the water. Just as a comparison, as a what deal you have.
We feel blessed.
You still have to make the bond payment.
Yes.
But they make a lot more.
So you have some decisions coming up. Where previous council could just, oh, that's in the future. That is coming now. And I don't know, maybe some of you will be gone by then, I don't know. But it's coming.
My financial lady might be gone by then.
So probably don't have to focus on this. This is just showing your current facilities. The green W's are wells. You've got some tanks. But as I said, the master plan will point out some strategic facilities that we recommend that you add so that you can accommodate these developments coming. Some of these developments that Teresa mentioned, I believe are in areas that you have no utilities. So you have to figure out how you're going to serve them. Developers sometimes have a rosy opinion of what they think should happen. There's a lot of utilities and a lot of costs to be able to serve them, and that should be considered. So here's just some pictures. So Canyon Springs, you have about 5 of those. Chlorine system, 1. Water tanks, you have 2.5 million and 1.6 million gallons. And wells, you have 4. Pipelines, hydrants, pressure reducing valves, and a SCADA system.
Have you looked at our tanks to see how much more growth we can have with what we have existing?
Yes. I don't know the numbers specifically. I just asked the engineer. So we're just starting to get those numbers, and we'll have that all laid out. How many houses we have left in the tanks, etc., and where we recommend that you start thinking of a new location to accommodate new growth.
So how many houses can one take, like the 2.5? How many houses can that handle?
That can handle Give me one second here. So you need about 0.3 acre feet. And 2.5 million.
There's 2 tanks at 2.5.
So the 2.5 can probably handle about 8,000 homes. That's a lot of homes. But that, you have to account for fire flow and redundancy and safety in there too.
One of the questions that's come up is if we get all the water piped, like we're getting recharge right now through the High Line.
Yeah.
How does that play in if it's,
Yeah, that's a concern because the High Line.
and we're not getting credit for recharge, but the recharge is there in water that we can.
Yeah, so what's being talked about is if the High Line does get piped, how do we replace that with other recharge?
Right.
So replacing it with artificial recharge, they call it. So that's ponds that are made to seep into the ground where you take spring water and actually inject it into the drinking water wells, store it in there, and
What-
then extract it back out.
What quality of water do you need to recharge?
So if you put it on the surface, you can use not drinking water because it seeps through and it gets filtered and cleaned on its way down. And then if it's drinking water, you can actually send it down the drinking water wells because it's of drinking water quality already.
So you put it, it's a little bit faster going down through, the more it gets down there.
Yeah.
All right.
And so here's your secondary system. You have a complete system, and that the concept is to continue with a complete secondary water system. But again, we'll need to look at pond locations, pump stations, etc., to accommodate new growth. So that you have the Strawberry High Line Canal, which we just talked about, Payson Canyon surface water. You have open storage ponds, you have 2 of those, and you have pressure reducing valves as the water comes down the hill. That's what your system is made up of.
I got a question on the High Line. So, one thing we talked about is building a reservoir. We decided that was too expensive because we have water that comes out of the dry creek that we have water rights to.
Yeah.
Is there a reason that we couldn't work with High Line to be able to charge their system, their canal in the spring with those water rights and get credit for that? It just seems like a waste of water to have it just go away when we have water rights to it and we have
We
something
can
to
take our water south and we can take their water in exchange.
Or they can store it higher in the mountains.
Right, so that's the other concept. When the high pressure pipeline comes, you're probably good to get a pond. I think we've done the math and you can actually fill that upper pond with this pressurized pipeline water. But we just got to make sure that we have, and again, that's part of the master planning process, got to make sure we have capacity to get it there. So you actually, so I'm also working for Salem and French work, but you actually probably have a good way to use that already by putting it into that upper pond so that you can get supplemental water. Because currently your springs are filling that.
Now let's reverse that, and we fill that pond with the water coming out of the canyon. How much pressure and energy would it take to pressurize that back up to the 300 psi at that bottom point?
So, so wet point.
So if you fill your upper pond,
Yep.
and you're putting the water directly back into that pipeline,
Mm-hmm.
if you put enough pressure behind that with a pump, you can push the water back into that pressured pipe.
Yeah, and you probably wouldn't put it back in because that would be pretty expensive, and there wouldn't be really a reason to do that. Once
Well,
you get
just for the water credits back is what I'm saying. That's why I'm wondering how, because if you open the valve,
Yep.
and it's so high at one point in time, the water will stop flowing, even in an open valve, no matter how much pressure is on the bottom.
Right.
So what is the pressure at the upper pond when it comes out, which is what you'd have to reverse to put it back into the pipe?
Right, so the pipe, yeah. So
Glad
you
you
let it
understand
push up
water.
the hill, and you're right, the pressure in the
Definitely
new
said.
pipe will be higher than that pond. You could actually go up even higher
Right.
in the pond. I don't know if that's feasible. But
But
Well, if
you'll be able
we
to
could
get
get
it.
one up high enough to recharge, but I don't think you would, because you'd have to be at the same level as Strawberry Water
So
Reservoir to
what you
fill
would do
it
is
down.
release enough energy right out of the ULS pipeline to match your upper pond.
Right, no, I understand the filling process, that's what I was saying. We're talking about recharging a canal, but when it's closed, that's not an option. You can't just pour it into an open ditch. It takes pressure to put it back into that line.
Right, that's correct.
So, but I just didn't know if you had a figure of what your rise from the pipeline to that pond
Those are
is.
exactly the types of things that we have to calculate and see.
Okay.
We'll also have a model that we can look at it and see how things will work.
All right, well, that's where I'd be interested, so if you
Yeah,
can
absolutely.
crunch those numbers for me, that'd be great, thanks.
Yep.
While we're still talking about the High Line,
Yeah.
are you working at all with the High Line to see what it would cost and the feasibility study of piping the High Line? So we keep the savings of the 30% and not give it CUP?
Yeah, I personally have not been making those calculations. I know it's been looked at and talked about. And I would predict that it will happen eventually. So just a quick evaluation. It looks like you have plenty of water rights. Water sources look good, although you need to make sure that you're making plans for those. Water quality, your drinking water looks great, and even your secondary water, your pressurized irrigation water, compared to others, is really of good quality in your
Both
city.
systems?
Right. So your drinking water, obviously.
No, we have 2 PI systems. And I know that the one system is a little dirtier than the other one.
Yeah, but they're both, when you compare, let's say, Saratoga Springs,
Okay.
their water is, well, the Utah lake water is actually their better water. And then your water is.
That's a good
like
perspective.
a whole different level.
I know that if you're pulling out of that upper pond at the right time, it's hard to tell if it's drinking water or not. 'Cause
Right.
It's pretty clear.
Yep, and for the most part, the water coming out of Spanish Fork River and even Strawberry, that's all pretty good water. Yeah, unless there's a big flood.
I'm in the dirty system, it's a little dirtier, but it's not super rad.
So water storage, you'll need to keep up both on the PI system and the drinking water system. You'll need to plan for the right time to add a new facility to accommodate that growth. And transmission lines, the same thing. It's hard to spend a lot of money to go to all the places that developers want to develop. You're going to have to choose where those initial pipes go, and that will probably direct where development will go to. But that's all related to their sewer and all sorts of other utilities and land use that needs to be discussed along with that. But what you decide where projects will go will determine probably where growth will happen first. So facilities construction needed to do all that. So the water system facilities, right now, we're doing an assessment of your facilities to let you know your conditions of the tanks and the pumps and the wells, the age of your pipes and when you might need to replace things. So that's ongoing, and you'll have that information also about the same time you have master planning data available.
So you'll find all the pipes are gonna leak here in the next year, so we can fix them before they leak, right?
Yeah, hopefully. But we have to recharge the groundwater, right? Remember?
I don't think we get credit for that,
Oh.
recharge.
Well, you pay for it.
Are you looking at Blackwater as well, or just 2?
So eventually, the water coming out of the sewage treatment plant, it's usually more expensive, but obviously that's in the plan to use that at a place where it's appropriate and makes sense. So the plan for the assessments, we're going to set up a geodatabase. We're going to do it in the computer in GIS, a systems facility inventory and inspection. We'll input data, we'll have maps, photos, detailed, all that detail will go into the geodatabase. We'll do physical assessments of the facility, so we'll go visit them and assess their condition. And then we'll provide maps in the database to the city so that you'll have that to make decisions on replacement, timing, and costs.
Is that database something that our engineers can update as we go, or is that something?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That would be the concept, is it will set up the database, and then the city could maintain that going forward.
or we could pay you to insert that information. I just like to make sure that what we budgeted for ends where we need to budget for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the presentation. You guys have any other questions about water? You should know all you need to know about water. Basically.
What's our current water status? It changes on a weekly basis, but.
Yeah. You're looking great.
Well, no, like, what was it 170% now or 150? Where are we at?
Who knows the latest number?
It was just under 150 last week.
And it's supposed to
That-
storm.
Down at the water
next couple
conference, they said
weeks
we're
now.
looking really good statewide, but especially in this area. And the thing that they said was good. It could change, but it's been relatively cool. It's cooler than normal the last few months, and so if that continues, they felt like we wouldn't have much of a concern with flooding.
Right.
Because it'll come down slow enough that that could turn off and turn
You never
on.
know.
Yeah. I had one question. Previous council member has kind of been pushing this issue. So in your professional opinion, you may or may not want to weigh in on this. The reservoir, is that worth the money or not?
Definitely.
Definitely worth the money?
Maybe.
Definitely maybe?
I need to do the master planning and get into that. At the right time, you'll need one eventually.
Okay.
Is
in
it,
the right
is it
place.
something we need to look at maybe a different location? Because
Yes.
I've discussed that. The one that currently isn't feasible because of the cost per acre foot to build it. But if we were to move it and relocate it higher up, maybe in a different location, with less permeable soil, that it would actually decrease the cost per acre foot of water.
Right.
So that's, I mean,
That's almost impossible.
don't
It's
get
on
tunnel
federal land.
vision right there, but
Right.
it is federal land, but that's.
That was the previous discussion as to, that's
Right.
an active
So I guess
God.
I don't know enough to tell you the right answer, and I'll probably get myself into trouble if I
Okay.
say much more. But finding the correct locations for additional ponds is.
And you do that for us?
Absolutely.
So are you talking ponds or big reservoir? Where he's talking about a big reservoir, not a pond.
Well, I don't know, yeah, it depends on, I've looked at pretty big reservoirs. I don't know how big a reservoir you need, and that's part of what we'll be looking at.
Steve doesn't know about the reservoir up the campus.
That's why I'm thinking.
Oh,
Yeah, it
okay.
does.
So you're not
Talking
familiar.
about something different.
There's already a study out there that
So
there's
we
a
can
reservoir.
provide Steve
Will
that,
you let him,
that he
yeah.
can look at it.
You're talking about raw water storage.
They were talking about putting a dam up the canyon and building a reservoir for raw water storage.
Right.
It was a 10,000 acre foot reservoir. It is feasible, the feasibility study.
Yeah, it's only
feasible.
done.
There's a fault line, so it's pretty expensive to build.
Yeah.
We approached Central Utah,
Like 100
and they said the amount of water you get, it'd be, how much was?
Well, I
They said it was
heard
on
the
the high
numbers,
end of
it was
the water you
as
would get out.
expensive to build
Or
Jordanelle as it would be to build this one.
Right, and
And
then
it's
you
a
look at
50
your
acre.
numbers of the water available, then you don't really
It doesn't
need
make
to
sense.
store
Okay.
more water.
Yeah.
Maybe you tucked yourself out of it. I don't know.
I was already on that side, I just,
We'll let him look at the study.
One last question that's kind of
to know.
toying over my mind in the last month is the water that's running out of our sewer system currently right now. A certain percentage of it is claimed as water rights, but is there, I'd like to see the feasibility of a pond on that end of the spectrum to store water, even if it was just a recharge pond, or possibly a catchment to pump water back up. I know that's expensive to pump it back up, but if it's there, it's cheaper to pump it up there than it is to pay $16,000 an acre foot for it.
Right.
So,
But
but
you also have a lot in your portfolio. that-
we do have a lot in our portfolio, so but I mean, if it was like, yeah, in 40 years, you may want to own this piece of property because you could put a pond here, that might be something we want to look
Preserving
at.
property is a cheap way
To start the process, yeah. So that's just kind of where I'm at on that, so.
Great. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, we appreciate Steve being here. He was presenting to the Utah water users this morning at about 11.
Oh, down at
So
St.
he hasn't
George?
been home yet. I think he's just stopped here. But we appreciate all the work he's doing. We wanted to let you know that he is working for us, to get these things done for us. He's also helping with Mount Nebo, with Say and Spanish Fork. So it's a good resource to have. And we get a master plan here, and then we got to start chipping away at it.
Hey, I had one other question. Can we get that information sent to us?
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah. Well, I'll email after you.
What's nice about this is we are looking forward and planning forward with our water, and that's a big concern, so it's good that we're getting started now, so thank you. So we have a report from Tableau Way. Who's representing them? Okay.
Maybe you can table that. I think they requested to be on the agenda.
Okay, we'll just table that. We did that one, did that one. What was that? They aren't here. Okay, we have the presentation discussion regarding the National League of City Services line warranty program. Is that you, Dave?
Is Dennis here, Lion? Okay.
You want to table that one too?
Yeah, I think he said he was going to be here. Maybe if he'll come later, maybe you can table it, see if he comes. But this was a presentation that was presented to the council in 2017. So I attached those again so you could look at it, and then some of the updated information. But they want to come present again. The changes from 2017 to now is the Utah League of Cities and Towns have endorsed them. Some of the we do have a mandate through the state legislature. One of the laws, we have to inform the residents of their responsibility of the pipes from the main line to their homes, and we have to do that twice a year. This thing would this program would satisfy that, because they would send out letters, I think 2 to 3 times a year. If we participate in that, we put our letterhead and partner with them. It's a voluntary program. You can sign up for insurance to cover any breaks that might happen on your side of the city of the responsibility. I did talk to Orange City. They are doing it. Overall they felt pretty satisfied with the company. They had claims that have been paid out. So they want to come present again. I thought they would be here, so if they don't show up, we can table it and see if they can come back another time. But that's kind of what the program is. It helps satisfy our responsibility to state code. Plus, if residents want to, they can sign up for that coverage. If they don't want to, they're not obligated to.
Okay. If they come, we'll come back to that. So now we're go to action items, preliminary plan and final plat approval for the Payson Gateway subdivision. Is that you, Jill? Okay. And I don't have the mayor's cheat sheet with me, so it's a little harder.
Okay, sorry, I'm not ready. Actually, Councilman Hunt, if you want to go to the next one, Ron's will only take a second, and then I should be ready.
Okay, Ron, let's go to ordinance for the Payson City Development Guidelines for electrical construction specifications.
Councilman Yule, can you just maybe we skipped over the one for the wrestling team?
Oh,
I don't know if anybody's here from the wrestling team. Okay.
Yeah, I thought they weren't here. So.
Okay.
Okay, maybe the mayor, okay, can you put that on the agenda?
Okay, we'll check with the mayor on that one as well.
I think he told me they wouldn't be here, but
Okay.
I can't remember for sure, but I thought he told me that.
That wasn't my deal, so, okay.
Okay, on our electrical standards, we're just doing an update, and just showing, we've updated the pictures and the verbiage to meet all the new National Electric Safety Code and National Electric Code. No. So, I don't know if you have any questions, you look at the planning commission.
Any questions? Okay, do we have a motion?
And this does have an ordinance attached.
Roll call.
We need a motion for it.
Okay, I motion that we approve the ordinance supplementing the Payson City Development Guidelines by enacting and adopting additional separate supplemental or amended construction specifications, standards, and drawings. Ordinance number 2019-320.
I'll second. You got it?
Okay, we have a first and a second. Teresa's the second, or Councilman Hyatt. So well, this is a roll call vote, so we'll start with Councilman Hyatt.
Aye.
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 Thank you, Ron. Okay, Jill, you ready?
If they can all go that fast, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, so I do have already, so thank you for switching things around for a minute. But I do have a short presentation, just to give an overview. We do have a lot of people in the audience tonight, so that's good. So I'll try to be very descriptive so everybody knows what the applicant is requesting and the steps in order for this development to move forward. So the applicant is requesting preliminary and final approval of the Payson Gateway subdivision as a 5-lot commercial subdivision. The area that we're looking at is where the Orchard Hills recreation ball fields are located here, 800 West and 800 South. So we've got a large commercial area here that's next to I-15. And this area was rezoned last year in order to accommodate the expansion of commercial uses in this area. So the applicant is looking at doing a phased project on this, and we do have some plans to show you that. But it does involve 4 parcels right now, and the applicant is requesting a 5-lot subdivision as indicated here. You have a large unit here, and then you have 4 that are immediately along 800 South in this location. So I did color code a little bit just to show you the boundaries of each of those parcels. There is a chance that lot number 5 could be further subdivided in the future, but the applicant is waiting to get some additional information on tenant space. But they have refined, what could be developed here along 800 South, and the applicant has submitted plans for phase 1A, which is this lot in this location. So the zone changes I mentioned was approved last year. The subdivision, there's an application for a 5-lot subdivision. It does require a recommendation by the Planning Commission and approval by the City Council. And then there could be future divisions of land. The site plan, so there's 2 steps with this. Well, actually 3. You have the zone change, and then you have the subdivision, and then you have site plan. So in our commercial and industrial zones, if an applicant is coming in to develop a piece of property and he is developing it with a permitted use in the zone, then that can be reviewed and approved administratively by staff. So it will not come to the Planning Commission or to the City Council for approval. That's another reason that we give you that monthly update of projects so you know what's happening on all these parcels. And so the applicant has submitted for administrative approval for phase 1A. So it is a multi-tenant building on this lot here. And the applicant can address any questions that you have with the proposed tenants for that site. So this is the overall layout with the information the applicant has at this point in time. So this includes all of the property where the ball field is located. It does show a new intersection here of 930 West. So this is the existing 930 West going to the south to residential development and to the Payson LDS Temple. But they are showing that that road will be extended here, and at some point it will come in and connect with a stub road that's by Stadium Cinemas. So you have that road that extends there, so that is it is anticipated that that road will extend and connect to 800 South in this location. It also would provide the potential to have a lighted intersection there at 930 West and 800 South. But with the first phases that the applicant is looking at, it will only be a stub road to that point in order to provide access through for these lots adjacent to 800 South. There is one other connection. So 800 South is a limited access road. It is owned and operated by UDOT, and so they determine the access points. So we do have this intersection here, this roadway here, and then there will be another connection with 800 South in this location. But I believe it's and Travis can correct me if I'm wrong, it's a right in and right out. And so it's designed in a way that anybody coming out of here has to make a right-hand turn. They won't be taking a left-hand turn over several lanes of traffic. The applicant is also required to widen the road in this location in order to accommodate an acceleration and deceleration lane. and some bike lanes that we have proposed for the entire 8 South corridor. So the applicant has been working with UDOT to satisfy all of those regulations and standards in order for the widening of this frontage here. As I mentioned, they do have some multi-tenant buildings, possibly a financial institution that could go on some of these lots. Still trying to refine that. We've only received phase 1A at this time. They're looking to have a larger anchor for the site. Have not secured anyone for that yet, but they're looking at having that be a larger anchor and possibly some other commercial sites on the property. But all of that's going to depend on the market, how things are changing, what the interest that they have, and so some of those areas may be modified as the applicant continues to receive interest and as we see this commercial area grow. But we do have some access points onto 800 West, so you do have 800 West that's right here. There are a lot of residential properties in the area to the east and to the north. So that's one of the things that we included in your staff report and we've discussed in our presentations even at the planning commission level is that there does need to be a land use transition that occurs with each of these phases to make sure that we can reduce to the extent possible any negative impacts on those residential uses. So the applicant is aware of those and has even provided, with these meetings, some potential ways to mitigate some of the concerns that have been raised by the residents in the area. So here's the utility plan. There's some challenges that the applicant has because we do need to keep these ball fields, or at least the majority of the ball fields in operation until the new ball fields are built up on Main Street and 800 South by the Gene Common Recreation Complex. And so there's a lot of
And those
challenges.
are tentatively scheduled, right? Or are they just looking, just projected?
I am not aware of that. That's probably a better question for either Dave or for the applicant, so we can address the relocation. But I know that we have talked to the applicant before about possibly eliminating 2 fields here on the southern end in order to accommodate these additional phases. But someone else will have to address the timing of that. But we've got an existing stormwater pond on the site that needs to be relocated. So there are some short-term and some long-term solutions of how to address some of the existing utilities on the site. We do have a pressurized irrigation filter building that needs to be accommodated. There's a new PI line that's going in now. We've also got an existing well house in this location that has to be accommodated through development. So the applicant is aware of all those, has been including these on the plans to make sure that those are addressed on a short-term and a long-term basis. So here's the subdivision, as I mentioned, it's 5 lots. You've got the one here that they'll have to accommodate the existing well house. Phase 1A includes a multi-tenant building, and then I believe that's the case for this lot as well, and then possibly a financial institution on the corner, depending on the interest they receive. So that is the request tonight. I know that there's a lot of moving parts because there's a lot of different land use applications, but the applicant is just requesting to subdivide the property at this time. If you see any, or if there's any issues that need to be addressed through the site plan process that maybe staff has not evaluated, we would definitely want some guidance from you on those issues tonight. Some of those include some of the feedback that we received from the public during the public hearing process, and I'll go over those briefly in a moment. So project phasing, as I mentioned, we've got the 6 ball fields that are located. This is the current configuration of those on the site. And then the applicant is interested in doing the improvements in order to accommodate this little area right here. So it will have some impact on this ball field here. As we go to phase 1B and 1C, there'll be some impact on this ball field in this location. But it will be phased and also phased with relocating ball fields.
So removing where they, the pond there, in case we flood. Are they piping that somewhere else?
So they still have to, that has to be accommodated on the site. They are showing that that stormwater pond, which is at about this location, it will be piped up to a larger stormwater basin up here that will not only accommodate that water, but the water that's generated from the improvement of the other parcels in the subdivision.
It's a concern because those intersections always flood.
Across the street.
Yeah.
So that's good to know. We'll take note of that. Engineers know. Okay. So site plan review and approval, as I mentioned, this is what staff is reviewing internally, in order for the applicant to move forward. It does show the extension of 930 West in this location. There will be a private drive that continues to provide some access to those future lots. The building will be located on this corner right here, shows the parking, location of drive-through, different improvements there. But as you can see here, they're accommodating that acceleration lane in this location. And then, of course, this is widened from the existing curb line as it is today. This is the building that they're looking at building on that with that first phase. And then, so the approval
single, or is there?
No, it's,
A
well,
double?
no, you mean two-story, it's just single-story. It just appears that way because of the architectural
And then-
pitched roof. in
How
this
high,
location.
how tall is it?
I'm not sure. I'll have to look it up real quick.
I mean, if they looked at going maybe to two-story?
I don't know, we can ask Mr. Rich in a moment and see if they've considered.
No, but if you
Long
have
term.
apartments up on, above or something.
I know that they have looked at mixed use in other areas within the property boundaries. But I think here along the east side corridor, they're going to maximize the retail and shopping opportunities there. But I know that has been discussed here and there about the possibilities of mixed use in the area.
The bottom left, it has a peak elevation of 41.
Oh, okay, so you could,
Yeah.
41 feet. Does it say that there and you can read it? Or you?
I'm reading it.
You've got great eyesight.
Yes, I can read that here.
Okay.
But that's the elevation.
Yes, thank you. So approval process, as I mentioned, it's subdivision, requesting preliminary and final approval. It is 5 lots, that is the reason it's coming to you. We do have something in our ordinance that says if it's 3 lots or less, that it can be approved by the planning commission, but because it exceeds that, it is coming to you for the final decision. The public hearing was conducted at the planning commission meeting, but I do see some of the public here. We've got Drapers and Craigheads, and you've got Whitney Hathaway that were all at the planning commission meeting. But some of the comments that we heard at that time, and we included a copy of the minutes in your packet, but there were some comments about the extension of 930 West. Just the overall flow of traffic was a concern to the neighborhood, just because there is so much traffic in that area, and with more commercial development or more residential in the area, it's just going to increase. And so they want to make sure that we're looking at several avenues for access so that they're not all filtering into one area, or people trying to avoid the light and then using the access points on 800 West, which would actually impact those property owners there. So traffic concerns overall was a resounding concern from the neighbors of how do we address that. Safe walking routes. There are 2 safe walking routes in that area. And so they brought up the concern of, how are we going to address that during, those hours when the school children are either getting to Mount Nebo Junior High or if they're going over to Wilson Elementary. And they had asked some very specific questions that we are going to address with the UDOT Region 3 Director when we meet with him next month. There were some specific questions about the start and stop locations of those 2 school zones, and wondering if we could just have one continuous school zone instead of start, stop, start, stop. And so where that 800 South is UDOT facility, that's something that we need to discuss with them and see if there's any way that some of those needs could be accommodated. It was also mentioned at the meeting. So it was great because we had these residents that weren't just coming with, hey, these are their concerns. They actually had some solutions of could we do this or could we do that, which is very helpful. But there was even some comments of, we've got those crosswalks. Is there any way we can put up some lighted, trail crossing signs, or paint the crosswalk differently, or what could we do to enhance those areas? So not only for the school kids, but we want to make our community walkable. And, residents living in the immediate area, it'd be great if they could walk to a restaurant in this development instead of having to drive. And so if we can make it a safer place for all pedestrians, that's definitely the goal of the residents, and, something that we have to see as well. So we'll discuss that with you.
Well, as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking that that 930 West intersection, despite the fact that it might incur more traffic, but a lighted intersection there with the crosswalk on it could be a real asset to that street. So we could shift the one down that direction and pick it up for the middle school, which is probably what it'll be before the light ever comes up.
I think all of that will
versus-
be discussed, but I believe, and Chief Bishop, I'm not sure, have you talked with UDOT about maybe changing the location of that safe walking route?
We haven't yet.
Okay.
We will, yeah, that's the plan.
Yeah,
Because I know that
that'll
was
be,
something we had discussed, discussing
it'll
with
need
them,
to be
the
a,
location.
it'll need to be a crossing guard location where it's a middle school, whereas the junior high school doesn't require that, but that'd be a crossing guard that has to be there for a middle school.
To get across that highway, so.
Yeah, I didn't know where that switch was, if it's middle school or if it's junior high, but it sounds like it's with middle school, so. Okay. Because that was something that the residents brought up as well, is, you know, we've got the crossing guard with one and not the other, and we figured it was the difference between elementary and secondary. But with it going back to, I mean, that's definitely something.
That's what it was in the first place, that's why it's so long, so.
Okay, so we can talk about all of those things with UDOT, to see if we can find some solutions.
This is probably really expensive, so nobody wants to jump on this, but any discussion about a bridge over,
What was there?
a walking bridge over the road? I mean, the traffic's gonna just keep growing and growing as we develop to the west, and
I would
just
think an-
eliminating
I think an
potential
additional
problems.
stoplight would facilitate that better than that. I don't.
Oh, you're gonna have a stoplight there too. like-
Well, I mean, 930 West would have one, but what if we put one up by the church where the other crosswalk is? I don't know, that would be a traffic flow, that would be UDOT's decision where we can put those and what we can do, but that would seem like a really good first step. I think those.
Sure, well, I just think that whole area is going to develop, like.
Right.
There's gonna be a lot of people that wanna walk over there.
Well, and we've
And
already had
students
some of
and-
those discussions with UDOT just about, I mean, Nestor has put together a lot of traffic, information, you know, traffic counts, that he's seeing with development in the area and this particular commercial development. And so we already have that information that we share with them, and I think we can talk about all options in order to have that safe pedestrian movement. So we'll continue that, you know, the applicant will be able to move forward and start on the project here, but that's something that we want to continue a discussion with UDOT to see if that can be implemented. And then, land use transition, as I mentioned, there's residential in the north, there's residential to the east. So we need to be, very careful where we're putting access points, you know, possibly putting landscaping in a way so it can reduce the amount of light pollution or, the noise, you know, where's the loading and unloading areas, you know, and how's that impacting residential? Can we screen that? Can we try to, you know, decrease the amount of noise? So all of those things will be addressed with each of these phases, as they encroach onto, those residential areas. So the planning commission recommended, approval, you know, based on, staff considering all of those, concerns that were just raised there, because a lot of those will be done at the site plan level. So they do have that as part of their recommendation, is that, staff explore all of those as we continue through the site plan process. And then, of course, the city council will make the decision. Site plan, I mentioned it before, but permitted use, it's done at staff level. If it's a conditional use, it comes to the planning commission, city council. And then, these projects will either be completed building by building or phase by phase. It just depends on the amount of interest that the property owner receives, to develop on this property. So, currently it's just building by building, but we may see some more development in the future. So the recommendation of staff, it is a traditional subdivision, so if the applicant is willing and able to meet the minimum requirements of the zone, then approval should not be withheld. We would recommend that you include conditions of staff. Those are included in your packet, as well as red line drawings that have been forwarded to the applicant. So the findings of staff is, we feel that once the conditions of approval are satisfied, that it would be consistent with the land use and development ordinances, and also the subdivision will facilitate the construction of additional commercial properties and businesses that is consistent with the land use and economic development goals of the general plan. And then lastly, the city council, you know, the planning commission included in their recommendation. And I know that there are property owners here tonight that would like you to include in that motion, that we address the concerns raised by the public during that public hearing process. That is my presentation. Joe Rich is here representing, well, he's with Woodbury Corporation representing Black Watch Payson LLC. So So he may want to come up and add to that or clarify anything I meant, or that I mentioned. And then we're looking for a decision by the city council.
Are the tenants whose names was on the drawings, are those pretty set in stone?
Here he comes.
Hi, I'm Joe Rich with Woodbury Corporation. Those are the tenants that are on, that we're working with right now. They are not signed up yet, but they're close.
What is Farm Fresh? I don't even know. Okay. I googled them, it looks like they're, okay, all right. I heard about that one before, it's the other one that I hadn't heard about, so. Brett, that means you can talk about it now.
So good.
And I don't have anything really to add. Do you have any questions? I guess I would clarify. You asked, someone asked a question about the ball fields and
Timing?
timing and all that. And we're coordinating with Carl and staff, and it will be I don't know, simultaneous is the right word, but on a parallel track to where we will do construction at the same time with the new ball field.
That saves a lot of heat on our plate, that's for sure.
I think my other concern is just where that water retention basin is, like those homes on the other side flood every time it rains on 830 West or whatever it is. Isn't that about where it is?
Well, there's one at 800.
Be phase
South 800 West.
phase 1B is where it's
Well,
located.
no, I'm talking on the south side of the road. Yeah, on the other side, yeah, that one right there floods all the time. And so that system didn't connect recently from what I understand, and then just recently we were able to get, because it went under 800 South, and the state just turned that over to us so we can access that to help that, but now if we're moving it away, I'm just worried about those homes continuing to have water onto their property when it rains. So.
Noted. I appreciate that, and we'll make sure the engineering, that we work with staff and engineering, and make sure that.
Thank you.
There were some concerns about lighting, and I don't know what the options are, what the minimum lumen requirements are for there, but to me, I think more of a lesser decorative light pole rather than big overhead poles, something that's going to accent rather than look real industrial. It's kind of my push that direction.
Are you talking about on the east side or on the?
Just in that parking lot in general.
Okay.
I know that over in the.
Because decorative I'm okay with on 800 South, that's the entrance to our town.
Right.
Like I would rather have some good looking lights that say, hey, this is a nice town.
I had just noticed my father-in-law lives over south of the temple, and their light poles, you know, they're the black fancy fluted poles with the glass globe on the top, but they don't like blind you when you're looking at them. They're just kind of a soft hue light. I don't know if that would help facilitate, I don't know, the lighting requirements. That's what I'm saying. Just kind of weigh your options, and that was my only concern.
No, I think last time we had a meeting when Taylor was there, I think he was going to provide us with a timeline for the ball fields, and I still haven't seen one, and I thought we'd have one by tonight, that I could.
I have prepared one, and I've actually showed Carl, but I just want to make sure it's fully vetted before I give it to you. But we have something that we put together. I just need to get some more eyes on it.
So do you have your architects, engineers, whatever, working on plans as we talk, and they're moving along fairly rapidly, so.
They're moving along, we're preparing contracts right
Okay, good.
To start this spring.
now. Yes.
You can tell we're concerned about it.
And we have been for quite a while.
I understand.
Okay, any further discussion? I believe this would call for a motion. I'm ready for a motion.
Were there any exceptions or amendments to that motion, or is it?
If you want to go back, Jill, to your one that has all the.
Oh, yes.
It's staff findings and conditions based off of traffic patterns, I think.
Recognizing
But
that
I don't see,
we do have some neighbors here. I know it's not a public hearing, but did I address the issues adequately? Or, I don't know if you want to take a couple of comments.
We've got enough time.
I tried to do a good overview, but I know that they did take an opportunity.
They're here and they've got some interest. Go ahead.
Can I just comment from here?
No, I don't think so. Actually, we need to make a motion to turn control back to the mayor. Because you're still the designated mayor. Do we, Sarah,
Yes, sir.
do we need to make a motion to move from the pro control back to the pro tem, or does that automatically happen? Okay, good. Come on up to the mic.
We're just trying to do everything right.
My concern is we definitely need a light on 930.
I agree.
But I don't think that that is going to address the problem on 8 West. The kids are not going to walk down 2 blocks to walk back 2 blocks. They're just not.
Yeah. Well, that's a common problem wherever we have a safe walking route. It just is. We can identify the safe walking route, but it's up to the kids to utilize that safe walking route. So I agree with you. I really
But I
agree.
think something's got to be done, whether it's different mapping of the road, the extended school zone, something's got to happen
Well,
for 8 West.
it may be that we can talk to UDOT and see if we can identify a actual crossing guard at that intersection. It's fairly close, but we'll have to see if that is a possibility. No, taking note of the safety aspect of it too.
Okay. And then I don't think the question was addressed about the signs on the building. Do they mean anything at this point?
Want to address that, Joe?
The one did.
The one.
Cafe
The one
Ridge
did.
in preliminary planning
Okay.
to go into that building. The other is farm fresh, it's fictitious, so they don't know what's going in that portion of the building.
You're just figure it out.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
They make us out too. Try to make your comments as short as you can, because it's not a public hearing.
They covered the school thing pretty well. I was just, last time I was in here, filming anything that, I live on the west, or the east side of, I face west, so it's gonna be right in, I'm gonna be looking right at that big old box store. And the only thing I was just hoping that we can.
She's his home right here.
Yeah.
If you notice, that road's not going right straight to your house either, it's in
It's
between.
gonna be, yeah, it's gonna be right across from my driveway. So, yeah, it's gonna impact a little bit on
Yep.
getting in and out of my driveway. No, my concern is just separating the two, residential and commercial, maybe like a tree line or something, just to give us a little bit of, so we're not looking at those big monstrosities. You know, I mean, I'm not saying that we need it, we do, it's development. But,
Like the center planter strip.
Or
like,
in this area on.
yeah,
Oh,
just some trees or like
right over there on the other side, okay.
like a tree breaker or something, just to kind of break up those two.
And those kind of things can be addressed.
So that's the only thing.
And I was just
I
thinking
agree.
maybe, like when they're taking their kids to school or the school buses, maybe they could use a different route. Well, they're there earlier, the businesses won't be open until 9 or 10, so, but when they're coming back, it's the same thing, you might want to send them a different way.
And that would be up in the Naval School District, but they're not unadept at those kind of problems too, so. Okay. Anything further? Okay, I guess we're ready for a motion.
I can make a motion that we approve the preliminary and final plan approval for the Payson Gateway subdivision located at the northwest corner of the intersection 800 South and 800 West with staff conditions and looking at traffic and safety for our children, and also looking at some kind of buffer on, is it 800 West? Yeah, some kind of buffer between those buildings. I think that's a great idea. And one other thing is that we quickly get a timeline and understand where we are going on the ball fields, so we are out on those.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion that's been seconded. I believe we'll call for a roll call vote, starting with Councilman Christensen.
Aye.
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 I,
Motion passed. Thank you. Please excuse my lateness. I was involved in another governmental meeting, so.
I told him you're raising $1 million for us, so did you do it?
Yeah.
Sure, yeah, got it. I believe that brings to number 2, the ordinance, amendment to the Payson City Development Guidelines specific. Did we already do that? Okay. Then we go to number 3. Okay, fiber communications agreement between Utah Infrastructure Agency, UIA, and Payson City.
Mayor and Council, Utopia UIA, they came down here a month or so ago and gave a presentation to the council. Based on that conversation, they prepared an agreement, proposed agreement, and we've all had a chance to review that. Roger's here, he can talk more about it. We just wanted to put it before the council. It seemed like something the council wanted to do. As you look at one of the emails, there is some risk to this, and it's just something we have to decide if it's something we want to do. It seems pretty positive to get the rest of the city with high-speed internet sooner than later. So, Roger, do you want to come up and we can talk about some of the details of the contract? If you have any questions, we can discuss whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, so I won't go through all the details, but let me just hit some of the main points. Just kind of summarize it a little bit. This would have UIA take on the debt of the rest of the build out of the city. It expedites it significantly. We get this thing built out pretty quickly. We estimate less than a year, and it would be done. We put in the contract 14 months to give us a little bit of buffer, but the timing is actually really good for us right now. We just wrapped up a project in Woodland Hills, so we can get in here and do this pretty quickly. There's a lot of benefit in doing it quickly. If you look at the impact economically to the city, there's a significant savings when you have Utopia fiber. There's studies out there that show what happens when Utopia or actually any fiber provider comes and becomes available to a property. People generally save between $20 and $30 a month on their bill. And if you just look at that and say, well, if 1,800 more homes now have Utopia available and they save about $20 a month, that's on the low end. You're talking several $100,000 of savings by getting this in place quickly rather than waiting several years. The savings actually applies to those who don't sign up for the service just because there's competition too. So if you apply that to all of these homes, there's a huge benefit. There's also a lot of the business area of the city we don't service right now. And so this opens it up to all of the remaining areas of business very quickly. So just, even though we're talking about doing it now versus doing it anyways 3 to 4 years from now, there is a significant financial benefit to the community having this sooner than later. We do talk about risk. We've done some other projects. We're doing other projects that have some significant risk. From our perspective, this does not have significant risk. We've structured this in a way where there still is a city backstop, and then we've put in a whole bunch of protections on top of that. And so let me just address those really quickly. The revenue that counts towards the debt on this bond, it's UIA bonds, but it's backstopped by the city. About half of that would be covered in the customers we would get anyways, based on the growth we've had over the several years. If we continue that trend, we'd add about 312 customers anyways, based on the current rate of growth. And those we will count towards this revenue obligation. So really all we're talking about is we need to go get another 300 or so, 320 or so customers, exact numbers I have in my notes, out of this new area of 1,800 homes that are going to get built out. There's a really low bar. That comes out to about 17 or 18% of those new homes that would need to sign up for services before that obligation is met. Right now we have 31.25% take rate in the city across the areas that do have it available. It just keeps going up too. So there's that protection. Also, if in a very unlikely scenario, for some reason we didn't get the take rate, any amount the city pays gets paid back. The sum is a loan,
and that gets paid back to the city, so you're not actually out any money, it's just timing of things. And there's a kind of a 2-year ramp-up period before the obligation ends anyway. So we have time, we have momentum, we have resources, and we think there's a significant benefit to the city to doing it now versus waiting. But we're kind of interested in doing this how you want to do it. We don't want you to feel like we're pushing this upon the city, but we do believe this it would be in the best interest of the city, and we're excited to do it. I think demand is really high right now. We're having a lot of sign-ups and demand that we see from our perspective here.
Some of that motivation's been us contacting you as well, as a staff and as me as the mayor too. So I think it's something that's a joint venture.
So you mentioned this last time, but what is the current connection cost? Because it used to be like you had to pay all sorts of money up front and whatever. Like, what is that connection cost to somebody who wants to hook onto?
Yeah, so the most common option is it's a free installation, and they pay $30 a month for the fiber. And there's just a 1-year commitment, and then they pay $35 for the service. There is an option if people want to buy their connection and pay up front, they can pay $2,750, so $2,750 up front, and never pay the $30 a month. We don't see a lot of people do that, but some people do, and if you do the math on that, you're actually better off to do it, but it's a little bit painful. So that's available. I mean, some people, we hear that, people say, it sounds like it's very expensive, it's $27. Well, just do the $30 a month. That's what most people do.
So if the line runs in front of their house, but it actually hasn't been hooked in, that's only going to be a 1-year commitment of $30 a month plus whatever their provider is. Yeah. Okay.
Your all-in cost is about $65 a month.
And
So
how fast is that?
250 meg connection.
Yeah, it's pretty fast. I haven't, I love it.
So how does that compare to a 5G network?
Well, number one, 5G is not available.
But if it were?
If it were 5G, there's some trials where it's about $70, and you get, I think, 100 meg, and it's shared with the neighborhood, and it's experimental, and they've already stopped deploying it. So, like, for fixed service, Sacramento was like one of the first trial markets for that, and they actually stopped signups on that already. So 5G is great for mobile devices, and I know we'll see it someday over many years, and it'll be an incremental improvement over what you have for mobile devices. But even 5G doesn't have capacity for home service, so we actually really like 5G because those guys bought fiber from us, or they lease it. So it becomes an additional revenue stream into the fiber project when they do 5G.
As a reminder, we aren't the first city to approach this type of, if you will, secondary build-out. Layton, was it Murray?
Murray hasn't. Layton has done this same sort of structure, and so your bar is actually a little bit lower than theirs because you have a lot of infrastructure that's already in the city. So as we look at this and say, hey, we need to go get an incremental take rate of so many customers, yours is a little lower because it's less expensive for us to build here because we spent money in the past to do that and it was never finished. So there's a lot of assets that are just there. I mean, homeowners can go out there and look and see a steel cable going across between the poles that maybe, we have a lot of that in the city. We just gotta go put the fiber cable on it, right? So you have a really low bar compared to other cities for what you're on the hook for. Layton did it. I think their bar was they needed about a 22% take rate. We're trending towards 40+%, within that 2-year period. We think we'll do similarly here, but, we don't want to be overly optimistic. We want to be very conservatively.
So does the take rate start once the project is complete, or is it 2 years from like today, or 2 years from when the project is completed?
So the need to hit that take rate percentage it's really just a revenue target, but it's easy to think of it as a take rate.
Right.
We need to hit that when the first bond payment comes due, and that's out 2 years from the financing of the project. There's also a buffer that's built in because as of the execution of this agreement, any revenues that come in until then accumulate towards that. So actually have a buffer So we really, from a money flow perspective, we really have about 2.5 or more years before we say we really need to hit that target. So there's a lot of these layers of protection, and it isn't gonna cost the city anything, and have to go through scenarios for when it could happen, and if it does, and there's a loan and all the other stuff, but it's intentionally non-risky. We've built in those protections to make sure, and this is a mutual risk thing. It would be very bad for us when we say, oh crud, we didn't hit this. We look at this and say, this is low-hanging fruit, this will go really, really well. We don't worry about hitting the take rate. I know there were phases of the project, obviously, that didn't back before 2009, but every project we've done since that time has exceeded its target. So all of the UIA-based projects, we've done $125 million worth of projects since 2009, and all of them have exceeded their targets. None of the UIA projects or Utopia Phase 2 projects have lost money.
So the cities haven't had to come in and pay that share that they did reach?
No, the only shortfalls on the cities are shortfalls from the pre-2009 bonds. Everything after that's been profitable.
Which we are on the hook for that, right? Has that been budgeted in, Sarah? We already put that into our budget, which I believe was close to $193,000 or 267. There's a lot of numbers I was looking at, I was trying to remember which one. So, okay, that was my only concern.
So is that the full amount, or is that what we pay like every year?
No, that's, oh, that's, okay,
So
so
how
wasn't
long
there
before
an
we
initial
catch
payment
up?
that was part of it?
We pay that payment till 2027.
Because they didn't sign up, is that why?
So
We didn't have enough people sign up to use it?
No, that's the
No.
original bond.
Oh, okay.
That was the origination. Before anything was built at all, we had to finance it, and that was part of that obligation.
So do we get some of that money as it comes in?
No, because this is a different phase. This is a UIA project. It's not a, you'll see the contracts, the UIA thing, UIA finances and that. So it's, unfortunately that first phase is what it is. We don't get that money. When you make that payment, that pays bond payments from that, that very first project.
So that, we're talking about the section 2.4, the payment of the outstanding operating expenses, is that?
Okay, so that one is.
That's what I'm concerned about.
UIA, so UIA 2000, I guess it was probably more like 2010 when UIA started doing projects. UIA has paid quite a bit of money into the city to connect new customers.
Right.
Everybody that's been connected since that time was financed by UIA. And so UIA, when it did its first bond, needed time to go get enough customers and revenues to start making its bond payments, and has since then, covered them and then some. It is now making payments back to cities against those amounts paid. But Payson, I don't think, did Payson pay part?
Payson did not participate, and so at this point in time, as was explained last time I was here, there was an amount that puts us even with all cities, and that is a loan on us, and that gets paid back to the cities in full. But we needed to come even with all of the other cities to be able to
Receive that refund. So Sarah, that was the question I had, is that one-time payment been budgeted?
Yes, we did
But-
a budget amendment last year.
Okay, I thought we had, but I
Okay,
really
sorry.
wanted to clarify
We
that.
have a budget for that. I was gonna have a check for him to take, but I didn't get here till later this afternoon, so we'll get it in the mail.
So yeah, that thing was a one-time for the bridge UIA 2010 or so, maybe 2011, I can't remember the exact date, but it was about that time frame. UIA has begun paying those back to the cities. And so we budgeted some last year, we budgeted twice that this fiscal year, so you'll get, if you make that payment, you'll
We'll get
immediately
some of
say,
it back.
hey, guess what, now you're eligible for the rebates back on that, which would,
We call that the mend and bend.
So we'll get some of our old money back. When we pay that, we'll get percent of it back. So I have a couple of questions for you. So, we get credit for signups on what's already in place. What date does that start?
when we execute the contract, yeah.
Okay. The next question is it a net or a gross? So if we get new signups, but then some people fall off,
Are we getting credits for the new signups, or is it?
If the home where someone signs up has ever been installed, like the fiber has ever been installed to that house, then that's not counted because that infrastructure was paid for by some previous project. If that house has never been connected, then that counts towards the.
Well, I'm talking about the old part where,
Yeah, but even new customers in the old parts of the city,
Okay.
a new customer that has not been installed will count towards this obligation.
okay, what happens if somebody falls off? They get rid of their contract? Does that, are we talking net or
If
gross?
the fiber was paid for at their installation from a previous phase and they reconnect,
I'm not talking about reconnecting, I'm talking totally dropping off, getting out of the
They
system.
just quit.
They don't want it
that isn't
anymore.
harmless.
That doesn't, so we aren't penalized, it's not a net then, I mean, it's not a gross, it's a net.
And part of the reason on that is those customers back in the early days are going towards to pay off those early bonds, and those are committed under different contracts and that. So you have to keep Utopia and UIA separate in time, and those customers also. And they track that and follow those type of things for us.
So I guess going along with that, how many have signed up at some point in time in our older part? Is it 50%, 60%, or how many are still available and never signed up? You know?
In the original areas?
Yeah.
Well, we're at 31.25% that are on now. I don't have the number in front of me, but we probably only lost 5 to 10%.
So maybe 45% have signed up at some point in time.
Probably, a few hundred homes have had the service and don't have it today. Our churn rate, which is our loss rate annually, is really low. It's been about 3.8% or so annually, which is normally in this industry you expect it to be about 10% or more. So we historically have really good retention of customers.
Okay, any further discussion? Guess we're ready for a motion then, is that what we need? Okay. Anybody want to make a motion?
So are we looking for the verbiage?
I'll make a motion that we approve the fiber communications agreement between the Utah Infrastructure Agency, UIA, and Payson City. And the mayor can sign it.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay, it's been, the motion's been made, it's been seconded. Calls for a roll call vote, starting with Councilwoman Hyde. Aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you, Roger.
Thank you.
Excited to work with you.
Oh, in that thing it said.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
We're going to take a short break before getting to the work session. I couldn't tell.
Thanks for coming, guys. be different. Because it might be a UDOT thing. There's no speed, there's no speed limit sign on that street. Yeah.
There is.
Going that way.
But we still patrol it, because the residents of Rockville do have some extra patrol. The past speeds on that
Okay, Laura, you.
Because there was one day, my husband walked out the front door, right there at the crosswalk, the lights were flashing and everything, and this guy slowed down, and then he took off, and he almost hit a little girl, and the Craven was just shaking. He said he was in that far because they slowed down, and then they just gunned it up.
So there is going,
Right.
so it is going west, or the other way around. There's one going, going west.
I think when they done
Oh, they did put it back up.
it is. Come on.
But I would never say about that.
So you know better, you know what it's like.
You know, it's like, oh.
Good to see you twice in a day.
That's right. Good to see you. Yeah, everybody better go. Everybody is going.
So he's going to remember your case.
It's so crazy. I got to get my mufflers. I said, there's no way. They're going 35 miles an hour. Mufflers are mufflers. They're going there fast.
Tell me the day and what's going on in your mind, right?
Yes.
Great.
Great meeting with West Point the other day.
Over the phone. Sounds like you're working on it.
Good, that sounds great.
That was a very short break. Well, just to take me home.
Are you old?
How long? See if he gets anything I want on his one.
I walked up there for work session, in a work session after we had a full hall. Being there at 5. That's exactly what I told Dave Sunday.
Okay, you're back on the.
Okay.
Leaving this on the work
For the work session.
Just give them a call. Gotcha.
Since the 1st of March.
It's not covered. We're going to talk about it.
Lunch?
Oh, since.
Did you go to Naughty?
Yes, cut her hair. You what? I've been waiting 20 years for this haircut. She watched it from Sheila. No, just a haircut. I can do it. How long is her hair? She's been waiting. Well, she's had hair back and then she's.
I was going to ask that.
Yeah, it's hard to work.
I hear bad things when they should be.
How long will you be here?
Sarah, how long are you going to be here?
I should. No, I should be. I should be steady. Yeah.
Well, you can throw the budget out there, it'd be anywhere from an hour to 4 days.
Yeah, this thing is short when we're talking budget. Well, it's only employees tonight. It's still never short. Well, it's your guys' decision how long it is.
Well, it was,
You're right.
You're assuming that's spending millions of dollars in set this up.
as many times as
No, I thought we were going to be here, we said we're going to be here one time.
And all of that is that rich play.
It's on here.
That's why they didn't clarify you from that. She said Boy Scouts.
But it needs to fit in.
Yeah, she does.
And that one, I keep mine at 7.
And if they were to come again,
Oh, yeah, it is. Well, I just think that we have a little more.
Under contract, want to worry about that because they're.
I guess we're ready, Dave, anytime you are.
We're not that good.
No.
Okay, you ready?
Yep, we're
So
ready.
this is a work session, so we can talk about whatever you'd like. We thought these are some of the requests that we've had for additional employees. We're just saying now, as far as the budget goes, we're already in the red a little bit, so we have to figure out how to pay for this.
It's not the best way to start a budget work session
I
discussion.
know, but we want to bring it to your attention. But some of these, like the first one where it says Public Works Inspector, under contracted, I don't think that would be a drain on the budget because we're getting more permit fees and inspection fees. And we talked about doing that as a contract instead of bringing on a full-time employee. So I think we can handle the Public Works Inspector under contract, the GIS, contract for that as well with the increase in revenues with the demands that homes are being built. So that would not be a drain on the budget. And if the number of homes go down, the number of permits, then we wouldn't need as many inspections. Did I say that accurately, Travis? There is a request for a solid waste driver. That's not the one that's out at the landfill that we talked about, that new equipment. This is another driver with the demand getting heavier.
Do we have a truck or do we have to buy a truck too?
To buy a truck too.
So it's not this 43,000.
What's that?
Put a night shift in.
The night shift.
Exactly.
Use the same truck and do. And I talked to Ken about that.
Back there on the back row.
You can't run, they're CDL, so you can't run them that long.
You hire the employee, but you don't buy another truck.
Well, our trucks break down more than any vehicle in the city.
That's because they're garbage.
I talked to Ken a little bit about this, and it's just getting to the point where it's physically not possible to respond to.
Get all the routes done.
Yeah, get all the routes done.
So that one shows 43.5 plus benefits.
I have a quick question on that. Now, I know that this isn't going to go over very well with the public, but could you streamline it by requiring all garbage cans to be on one side of the road? That eliminates 50% of the distance they have to travel in order to be dumped. Would that streamline it enough that we could facilitate not happening to hire another driver?
I think it's one we'd have to look at. I know some cities do that.
Do we have data? Can we look at data on that?
Yeah, let's run it and see.
What other cities do?
I know that that's a pain for some, and there's some major roads you won't be able to take them across, but
Well,
I mean, if you live on an odd road, it's on the left side. If you're an even road, it's on the right side, you know, and
I have to take mine across the street.
they're gonna have wear and tear to one side of the road evenly.
we could switch off every other year like we did with the water.
All right, if you're watering, if you're water day and.
You know, and I think that's something to write into it. I don't have a problem with switching it over. I pull the garbage cans across the street out anyway, because they're, yeah, they need help, but anyway.
When they tip over there, they're always the same people getting their trash cans tipped over.
But in my opinion, that's something that needs to be addressed within the next 14 days when we come back in 1st of April, we need to approve it or go the other direction. I don't want to push that off and have them struggling.
But I think if you could just go straight down and not have to turn around, because they go down and then have to turn around, so they're hitting it twice, they're doing more driving.
Half the mileage is right.
Yeah.
I think we something worth looking at.
Yeah.
Okay.
You've got an on-call building inspector, that's, again, something to be contracted for.
I've driven through some of those neighborhoods. I don't know how we keep up with the building inspections right now. Isn't that something that's under impact fees that we can pay for that kind of stuff with?
Can't use impact fees. But
We have inspection
Buildings
fees.
permit.
you do
Yeah.
have additional.
They pay inspection fees.
Building
Right.
permits inspection, that should cover it.
Okay.
And we're looking at doing those all on contract, with the outside contractors. There is a request for a full-time, school resource officer, for the.
Junior high,
For the junior high.
which has been badly needed for a number of years.
Which junior high?
Well, one is gonna go back to middle school,
So when is that gonna happen?
15 months.
2 years, yeah.
Yeah. I got it.
May
I
of
got it.
2020 is the last year it'll be a junior
Yeah,
high.
2020.
It's the fall of 2020, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So next year.
Yeah, the Valley View Middle School is already under construction in
So
Salem,
that's
so
why
as soon as
we're
it's
gonna
done, they'll.
budget for it for next year, but not until what?
Yeah, I think
No, I think they put it into place now, don't they?
they wanna put it into place this next.
But which junior high are they gonna put it in?
I think they're split between the two
They
until
were
they're
split
done.
between, which is what we did a long time ago, and then the economy went, we had one that was gonna split their time between both.
And then, we might not be able to get rid of them.
Well, yeah, I never did get that far. We had the money here, and school district had the money, but the economy evaporated that.
So during the summer, are they available to do just regular?
That's what, Chief, is that what you'd plan?
What we've been doing with Officer Butler with the high school is having him come out and work nuisances in the summer, because our nuisance officer now has got kind of backlog with court papers and court transports and that kind of thing. So that's what we was planning on doing, or have them fill in for other shifts and that kind of thing, but we're gonna try and tackle that.
I know Salem, I actually saw them training their new officer, so that's the way they're pushing too. It's kind of an area wide, it's not, we're not an exception to the rule.
And the bottom line, Chief, that employee is ours. If we have an emergency, we can use that officer for whatever we need to use it for.
Right.
Okay.
So, but do they pay for the full?
They pay half.
So they pay for a full year?
Half your salary.
Yeah,
Half the
salary benefits, they pay for half.
Even in the summer?
Yes.
Okay.
So that one, yeah, the school district pay half that. There's a part-time police officer for court security. We do have some funds budgeted for that already. I don't know if we have enough for the 23,000, but we have a good portion of that, so that might not be an issue. Another patrol officer, that's looking like it's not in this year, but the year after. These are just some of the requests that have come in.
So blue is what you want this year, and green is what you want us to think about for next year.
Yeah, we're trying to get the whole plan for the next year. Just wanted to look at some of the requests, narcotics detective, traffic enforcement. These next three are power. For the electrical department, there's a mapping position, distribution manager, second apprentice. You're on here.
Are the
That's-
people retiring?
What's that?
No, these are new positions.
These are just positions
We
to
don't have
keep up.
people that could go into that?
I think that's in the GIS.
So it'd have to be somebody with the computer skills and engineering?
Yeah, and some of these, like those for the electrical department at the end of the enterprise funds, we look at that department. But, and we talked about these as all the department heads, and we looked at that as being maybe out, not this next, this coming budget year.
So map position, they're mapping all the, what does that mean?
They're
priority.
GIS is a geographic information system that overlays the city, and so they're marking where the lines are, where they tie into the houses, everything that's buried.
Who does that now?
Nobody.
That's the
I
problem.
don't think we have anybody do it, the power department.
And what you'll see is
But
all
as
of
a
the
city,
poles
who
will
does
be
it?
accounted for.
We have
And
some.
that's new,
No one employs.
right? That's
Yeah, we
just-
don't have it.
Yeah.
Like this last, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a new thing.
There's a request for an office manager, recreation. We've talked about some of these. Carl's here to discuss more, but we a few years back, we went to part-time employees, 2 of them at a time, because we had some financial, some fraud issues. So we had 2 people there at a time. It is more difficult with part-time because they're not as committed. We've had a lot of turnover. It'd be nicer if we had a full-time person, but we talked about having the recreation department come down here. Then we wouldn't have to have 2 people at a time because they'd be down here in the same office. We're probably going to have to come down here sometime when this new school's built, but that's a few years out. So we're just trying to figure out the best way to be more efficient and to limit the turnover. We have to keep training people and they don't stay very long. Is that accurate, Carl?
Yeah, that's right. We have one of the original hires, luckily, and we have a vacancy now, and we've offered that to 2 different people, and it's still vacant.
So what you're really looking at is replacing 2 part-time with a full-time, so it's probably not the 36 to 45 because we're already spending.
Right, that's the total cost.
That's the
It would-
total.
It would
Right.
be pretty much the cost of the.
It wouldn't hardly be anything,
Well, it's
right?
the
Well, right now we have
benefits.
4 positions budgeted, 4 part-time, and that basically would fill that position if we found a way to utilize getting them here with another person.
Or
So
we-
you do need 2 people there to help prevent.
Right. Or like you
fraud.
said, Brian, yeah, we have 1 full-time and the 2 part-time to be the second, but we do need to come up with half the income plus the benefits.
The benefits part.
Do we have space here? Is this little office corner over here somewhere?
Well,
We're looking to move them, but I don't wanna add
we've
$100,000 to the budget to build it.
We've started to explore options of what to do. Obviously, when the school gets built, we don't anticipate an office to be there. Build us a new office in the high school. But so yeah, could we come down here, various locations? A small corner office may work for the receptionist, but Jeremy and I need space to work as well. So there'll be multiple spaces needed.
Well, you need the redundancy. I'm just thinking like the new baseball facilities. Could we make room in there for that kind of a thing? It seems like a more appropriate place for it to be. But
Yeah, but still, if you're like during the winter, you're not gonna wanna go to the baseball
Well,
unless
those
you
aren't-
have the office
Those
like.
aren't easy access because they're in the middle of.
For the public, it's not easy access, right? But those are options. I know.
well, I
But
know
maybe
that
you can have
Salem
it
is
at the
in
ballpark.
there, but
There's-
it's
But they're
integrated
filled.
into the plan.
But that's kind of a senior citizen area too.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
yeah, it's a dual purpose building.
Right.
So is the biggest reason you have to have 2 people is because of money, taking cash?
Yeah.
Couldn't the cash be, if we had a person here, the cash could be at the counter where they're taking cash anywhere, right?
That was one discussion as well.
Yeah, I think that'd be the best way to solve that, instead of hiring more people just to
I think so.
watch cash. It doesn't make sense when we have people do that anyway.
So, yeah, that's an option. We could potentially bring one person here and handle everything, but
I
we,
mentioned that, and
we-
Carl's a little bit nervous that that employee will kind of get consumed with doing utility payments and everything, but to me, I like the idea that one-stop shop, that's what we went to at Provo. They had customer service center where whatever you wanted to do, they could help you, and
I'm not opposed to it. Again, a couple other office space. We have other things
Well,
happen,
what if
football
you just
year,
Did
going in
one
and out.
full-time employee that was, instead of 1 full-time and 2 part-time, but they work here.
That's what,
And they kind of specialized in that. I mean, they can jump in when
Just
needed
take
if we got
money.
busy, but they were specialized in the.
sure.
They do that in many places now. You get, they give you the paper, you go pay for it, and then you take it back and it's done. But they do not let that person take the money for that very reason.
right. Yeah, we've discussed a lot of options. We talked about, is there area in the senior center I'm probably gonna get shot for this, but we have that museum, the Daughter of Utah Pioneer Museum, that's prime office space that we could use. We're only getting bigger. To me, it would make sense to get with the petite, get the museums all together.
How active is Daughters of the Utah Pioneers, and how many people visit the museum?
They're a pretty active group.
Are they? I mean, I don't know, I just,
We may need to address it with them again. We addressed it several years ago, that there was some conflict between the PE and the DUP.
like,
And so,
personality conflict?
but it
or-
does make sense to have all the museums up there. You'd have more people see what's here up there.
Right.
But we do have, it's open on Wednesdays here, but.
So locking up an entire building for one day doesn't seem like an efficient use of time at all. I mean, I'm all for history, my degree's in history, but that does not seem like an efficient use of time or space at all.
Yeah, I just don't recall what the exact issues were. I know there was when we negotiated that contract, probably 5-10 years ago.
It's probably about 5 years ago, maybe 6, yeah. Yeah, there were some issues with the artifacts themselves of who owned them, whether it was DUP or PPP, and they were mixed among the museums, and then I think they sorted those out and said, this is
So now
ours.
they can tag them and go back, I mean, they know what's theirs, right?
Right, it's a great possibility.
But they keep it locked up anyway, they keep all those
Is there
Oh,
room
yeah.
in
locked up when they're
Petite
not
for it?
open.
This is why budget sessions go long.
Yeah.
We're only halfway through this list.
Yeah, potentially there's room. I mean, there's rooms in the petite need that maybe one could be dedicated to the DUP, or it could be mixed in, like you said, tagged and just mixed in. That's something we
Yeah,
can
needs to be
begin
discussed.
to look at.
Well, there's also the question of whether, if that doesn't work, can recreation get an office in Petite? Because you have a ton of dancers and
Yep, we
everything
talked,
else that are already using that,
we talked about that as well.
so they're already there.
But you would lack the redundancy we need with the other employees.
Right, that wouldn't solve the redundancy problem.
Yeah, that would take care
Yeah.
of the money problem, because they're.
They should make Janine stay there all day.
Right.
It's
And we even talked
getting
about,
nasty.
well, we even talked about tagging that up with Janine, but again, Janine's out in the field.
Yeah, she's out and about quite a bit.
So that's really difficult, right.
All right, as we go down, this is the facilities, this is the one to take Bill's place. We do have funds for this, so this was on here, but I think we're covered with that. Mel, do you know if that's been put out to bid?
Yes, we just made an offer on that position, but that was a portion of, well, let's see. Yes, that's
Mickey's.
No, that's
Mickey's
Mickey's,
position.
this is the part-timer.
This was that older guy up at the TV.
Isn't it?
No, this is,
No,
no, this is what we
full-time.
initially proposed, Dave. This is the initial proposal.
Oh, this
but
is, okay.
we-
And whatever we do, though, I'd like to make sure that we keep Steve, you know,
Fully
like
staffed.
fully staffed, yes, exactly right.
So this would have been a separate position, Dave. This would have been a completely separate position, the way it's proposed. And I think Steve would still like to see an additional person, because what we did, we had when Greg Tolman resigned from the city, we took his position. Do you want me to-
So this is old data here. I thought we did an updated list of.
Well, that's if, yeah, that's right, it is incorrect, unfortunately, that's the initial.
Okay.
Sorry. So Greg Tolman resigned, and he was over the pool maintenance side of things. And as Carl and I met and looked at recruiting and what we need to do to recruit that, we took the part-time pool manager and chose not to hire that position and to combine and get an aquatics person and to have somebody that's over the facilities. So we were initially proposing a separate maintenance position, but we took Mickey's position and upgraded it to the facility maintenance supervisor position, and created a different position, our aquatics manager position, as a full-time position rather than a part-time position. So we basically still have the budget, but we shifted some things. So part of Steve's concern has been, now you're assigning one of the facilities people to be a dedicated position over helping with the pool.
So that's just what, 4
Well-
months out of the year? Right.
But he's had the ability to have somebody there the full year, so I'd like to see him have that ability to have somebody there to help him.
We discussed that today with him. Because Milt really wasn't available, I mentioned to Steve that maybe Milt's position should be hired as a seasonal employee, so he'll be here full-time during those pool months.
Yeah.
And then wintertime, he did say wintertime is slow for them, and he was okay with that. He actually said that was a good idea, to
Okay.
have a full-time
But-
during the 4 months.
Yeah, just so he has somebody there
Yes.
that he's not by himself.
Right.
But how do you facilitate that?
What do you mean?
To hire a full-time person in the summer months?
Just put it out for seasonal,
Seasonal work.
just like we
I
do
mean,
with
is it-
mowers and
Okay.
summer help.
So not a supervisory position, you're just talking
No,
about?
that'd be a technician.
Okay. That's where I was getting confused on the two. But I know at the same time, I mean, we're gearing up that maybe one day we could look at enclosing that, at least the lap portion of the pool.
And then we'd have
I'd like to see some options on the table of even a bubble over just that region, whatever. Because I know there's a big push, the district wants it done, and, I
And
just,
then that would be,
I wouldn't mind seeing it in front of us, doesn't mean we have to necessarily budget for it, but this position would become a full-time position at that point in time.
Right.
So how far out are we looking at some numbers?
So I know briefly,
what
sorry.
would it cost to bubble it? Like they've
We
done
have
out
some
there,
numbers.
out in,
Yeah, I've got a bunch of numbers.
The old numbers.
Carl's got numbers.
so that one that they've done out there by, in Geneva,
Yeah, UVU's building.
How much,
That was 3 million.
Yeah.
that's a huge building,
So would
This
you
was
bubble
a-
the whole thing or just lap?
just the last.
Just a lap pool. We talked about a bubble, a sprung structure, which is a little more permanent like the UVU one, and a hard surface building. I know last council meeting, Brian talked about getting survey out to the public to see, hey, can we get it on the ballot? I visited with several architects in the field regarding, timeline to get things on. They felt that was a little rushed. I haven't got to talk to Brian yet since my conference last week, but we're going to set a meeting with a couple of them to explore some of the options we talked about. We're also doing the master plan for Parks and Recreation currently and putting out surveys, so we don't want to dilute either survey. If that's the case, maybe they're both in the same one. So numbers change very fast. Those numbers are old. They're 3 years old. The ones we had range from 1.8 million up to 3.4 million. I'm sure it's double. But yes, that's an option. Maybe that's covered. When that's covered, maybe recreation offices are built right there as well.
Right there. Is that something, so do we want to table that position for now or do part-time, seasonal or?
You still have to have it for next year.
So that's been addressed. Sorry, that should have been taken off. So
Which
we
one?
did, Melanie, yes,
Just kidding.
no. Melanie explained that Mickey's position, we added the pool maintenance on there. So they're gonna be
Right.
in charge of the pool. And then for the 4 months, Milt's position, instead of being year-round part-time, it will be a full-time seasonal. So they'll be full-time during the summer months when the pool is up and running.
Okay.
So, sorry, that should
And I
have been
think
taken off.
the key on that too is if that, that may or may not work well. It may work really well if there's an employee,
Right.
but if it's difficult to hire, obviously
Then,
something needs to
yeah,
be
we need
addressed.
to
We'll have to,
And then-
we'll have to reevaluate.
I think the long term, like you said, yeah, ideally if there's a lot of facilities. So.
Yeah.
Small engine mechanic, we've had some requests to have a mechanic that can handle some of the small stuff, the golf carts, the cemetery equipment, some of the other equipment. The main mechanics haven't had time to get to some of those things. This could be split with different budgets. I think it's both general fund and enterprise
So
fund.
what does that cost to, like, set out to people? Because, I mean, my small engine things, I send out to different people to fix them depending on what it is. I send it to a different person. And I usually have it back in a couple of days, and it doesn't cost me that much.
We have $1 million, over $1 million worth of small equipment, so we're not talking about a lawnmower.
No, what I'm saying is, like.
No, I
that's what we
understand
need to
what you're
know is
saying,
how
like, if
much
we-
you actually have that done.
Right, it's not only, it just depends on the mower, that's kind of a tough question to answer because you don't know what's gonna happen, but it's also time down from any piece of machinery. So when we're talking small engine repair, like when we're doing the cemetery or something like that, we're talking about mowers that are anywhere from $35,000 to $85,000 piece of equipment. So it's almost like a car, they're computerized, and it's transporting them to get them fixed. The problem is, in Larry's department, they've gotten so busy. Obviously, you saw the garbage truck and stuff. The big equipment's always down, and so all of our small pieces of equipment get overlooked, you know. And I would like to see get someone on there that's more preventive maintenance, that everything's getting kept up, so that we don't lose a piece of equipment. And it would be split over cemetery, parks, you know, corridor main trails, and golf. The position.
Murphy's Law says it'll go out right before the Memorial Day program.
No, exactly. So
Well, I think we should have control over
We need to make
our
sure,
maintenance.
which won't be a problem this year, we need to make sure grass is green for the Memorial Day.
yeah, so I'll be down hand watering.
No, I'm telling you, I get, that's what I hear, so whatever it is, we get all sorts of.
The fertilizer on yet? No, we don't fertilize if we want to get into agronomy, but right now all the roots are chasing the water down. You don't have to, you know, so people that fertilize too early, then you bring the food to the top of the plant. So we wait, but we will be, the cemetery will be green. How about I just leave it at that?
Even if it's spray paint, make sure it's green.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's not organically fertilized, is it?
Yeah.
I think you kind of answered it, but I've always wondered where we've had more and more vehicles on lease. We still have the need for a full-time position that's, I'm not talking about like individuals, but we still have a need for that position? Like, are the vehicles breaking down? I guess I didn't think about the garbage truck, so that changes the.
Yeah.
So, but there's enough heavy equipment that he's busy all the time?
Yeah, well,
Because I wondered about that, because we lease our police fleet, we lease our other, I mean,
Yeah, but
we
they
lease a
still
lot
have
of oil
stuff,
changes.
so-
They still maintain and fix tires, track hoes, dozers. They're pretty busy.
Jet trucks when they break down in the middle of the night when they're trying to.
right, it's just growing pains. We're
Okay,
just
no,
yeah.
that's.
Yeah.
But I was gonna look on this small engine to see if I could get a contract person, that's got some good experience to see if we could, to see how it works.
Yeah.
And if we could dedicate a contract person to see how they do.
Yeah.
And I know we say small engines, but like Tracy said, it's not really small engines, it's.
Yeah, it's mowers, they're
Right.
a pretty big piece of equipment.
Yeah.
Right, but a lot of the small engines need all of that too.
Yeah, Carl's, it's just a bunch of our departments that have this, just the small.
And you could, if you send it out, I waited up to a week and a half to get my lawnmower back, and that's, that's too long.
It's
for us.
like, even like on a golf cart, it's incredible how much they charge us just to show up. Like, we'll pay way more to have them come down, and they'll put a $20 part in there, and it'll cost us $250 if we did it that way. You know how, it's really.
Well, that's maybe if you looked at it, like I have my own mechanic, and he said to me, like when you say $1 million, I have $1 million worth of equipment too. He saves me thousands and thousands of dollars, and I can just drop it off, or he comes to my place and pulls it up and gets it fixed, and it's done, and it's right back to me. If we could find somebody like that, I would say use him, but I know that he can't do it physically.
Okay.
I would look. If there's probably there are mechanics out there who would totally, I think they're semi-retired and they're looking for a job like this just to.
No,
stay
absolutely.
busy.
That's what we're looking for.
That's what I was gonna look for.
Yes.
Well, they're like 50, 55 years old and they're retired.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're looking for, someone who's been around it, but, that we can train in all these different, because it's not like the lawnmower I have, it's computerized, it's all different, but that's exactly what we're looking for, is just someone who's maybe, can help out that's that age.
And I think what Dave talked about, if we get somebody just for contract and we don't have to pay benefits and everything, that'd be great.
Whatever, yeah, that would be awesome, great.
We looked at park superintendent, splitting that off, golf superintendent right now, Mark's doing both of those, he's gonna retire at the end of the year. I don't know if we're quite ready for that, just because it's expensive to have 2 new superintendents. Tracy, do you want to weigh in on that at all?
Sure. I believe, like, I just think because of the overall budget, it would be way easier for us if we split it and we just hire a new park superintendent that we'd work with and stuff. But when you look at the overall budget, I think Greg, who most likely is going to be the best candidate to take Mark's position at the golf courses, and I've spoken with him a lot about this, he's very capable and able to continue how we're doing. And so when I talked to Dave, it was like, you know, that we ought to try this for a year and see
how it works.
See how it works. See if it's too overwhelming. I guess the con to this is Mark has Greg at the golf course. Mark's had Greg, so Mark could check the parks and stuff like that. Now Greg's not going to have another Greg. We have Paul, who's new, who's doing quite well, but you know, it takes a while to get to know everything. So there'll be a little growing pains, but Greg is able and capable. So I think we ought to, when Mark retires, move Greg into that and then reevaluate after a year if it's too much or if we need to, you know, do something else.
We discussed this when we were on our break, Doug and I, because we kind of were anticipating this one. And my input down the line, let's give it a year and see what it looks like, because we're not in that position now. But I think that if we could utilize our golf course year round, I had thrown out the cross-country skiing, or we used to tube up there, and I know that's a liability issue. I don't know if there's a way around that.
Well, when we tubed up there, we lost $25,000 when we did a tubing thing at the golf course. I just want to put that out there. We talked about that's how much we lost.
That's not worth doing it, in my opinion, then. And so and I'm just throwing ideas out there, and I know we're looking at expanding Forebay for summer and winter uses and all that. That's kind of
trying to tie into the branding, and you did cross country and or you hired someone outside to do mini snowboarding.
Well, okay,
something.
But when I'm saying that, it sounds like I'm not. There's a difference between. Look, we're going to put a shop at the golf course and skiers. I would love to have people use it where a track went through there. But I think if you're planning on charging people to recreate at the golf course with snow, you're going to lose money.
No, and I'm looking more at revenue that would come in through a shop that was open there.
I'm 100% on board with that.
Your coffee and hot chocolate and donuts or whatever you sell there, you rent skis. But I think that as we push for that adventure, I think that we need that. So I'm in favor of the second employee as we transition to that kind of a model. So that's what I'm trying to say there.
So when we did the tubes, we rented tubes. We sold hot chocolate and chili, and soup, and you know, the problem was a winter like this was great, but we were busy over Christmas break. And it was mostly, or you'd have a young men's or a young women's group come on. But, so if you, like, I think your best bet is to put something up near Forebay or at the mouth of the canyon, a shop or something to rent, but you could use our facility as a track or whatever.
Yep.
We just don't get the snow, we don't get enough snow right where we're at, you know.
To do it and to facilitate it. And that's kind of, I'm worried that we're going to throw this brand out there and not have what we need.
Well, we're kind of cheap. Not saying the city, but people would rather go find it or hill and not have to pay for it. Exactly, like the petite meet.
Exactly.
But I think there's cross country. We have groomed trails. I think that could work. I think if we had a
snow biking, whatever they
tow
call
rope
it,
that took people up and had trails, that might work. But just to open it up and say, here's our.
Well, no. So I've always advocated that, and of course I don't know the numbers, but that we should put in a tow rope or something like that. That you pay for your, and that might be too expensive. I mean, we'd have to look at what Soldier Hollow or whatever that place in Heber does, and their hill's bigger than ours, and so it's probably not realistic.
But I think as we ramp up,
but I'm not talking about like some
adventure. We have to have some
come to Petiti and we try to like control who goes down the hill and who doesn't.
I don't see what's wrong if you groom. It's not that much to get a groomer behind a snowmobile to groom cross country trail, and I hate to say this, but not charge. but just say, come to Payson, and
Well-
there's a great,
I'm advocating that, that's why
Yeah,
I'm okay with the
yeah.
second superintendent to cover
And it's
making
a-
sure all that happens.
so,
And it's an access to the rest of the canyon.
right, and
Right.
it just brings people to our community, but
Right.
eventually we're gonna get big enough where Greg or whatever, if we split that off, and then I feel like, that parks superintendent should be an arborist, which, the electrical department could help, because the amount of money we pay for, tree cutting through the electrical department.
I've already brought that up with Dave as well, that
Yeah,
we need an
so
arborist. in
I
our
feel
own
like
arsenal.
that eventually that's what that'll morph into is the city arborist.
Well, that actually makes sense, to have the parks director be an arborist.
Yeah, just.
Yeah, that'd save a lot of money.
I do know the power, you know, like the cities that have their own electrical department, there are quite a few of them that have arborists on board in their department because of the clearing of the lines and those types of things. There's need among various departments that can be fulfilled.
So is the arborist the only one that can run the chainsaw, or is that something they can delegate out and say, this is how you're supposed to do it properly? Because I'm looking at this, you just took this and it blew up into a whole can of worms, and now I'm like, well, we're gonna pay for a park superintendent that's gonna be cutting trees all day long.
No, I think that he supervises
Okay.
the other departments.
Or seasonal
things like
employees
that,
or things like that.
And educates them on how to work with the trees and when to work with them and those type of things. It's his knowledge that he has as opposed to crews.
Right.
And again, that would be a year from January if you guys decide to let Greg, Greg wouldn't take over till January, so it'd be the following January that we'd even address, maybe to come back up and say, well, we need to massage this and do this, or, this is or isn't working.
Okay.
And I definitely think Greg would be the one.
Oh, me too. I
That makes
just
sense.
don't know if I can say that, but I'm 100%.
Well, I
Yeah.
know you can, but
Yeah.
I can say Greg moves a lot faster than Mark did.
Yeah, Greg will be really good. Greg,
And I dare say that because Mark's not here, he can't go forever.
No, Mark.
But it's the truth.
Yeah, I love Mark. And
I don't care, hello, Mark.
But yeah, he should be absolutely front for sure.
We've also had a request for a fire marshal battalion chief to be there full-time. We are having the fire and the ambulance together. He's also looking at some part-time EMTs. I've needed to sit down with Scott and get more into detail of what the requirement is there, but that's been a request. We did talk about getting a city recorder. With the different things coming, it's getting busier and busier. Kim Hollandrake is doing a lot of the recorder duties, but she's also the Development Services Secretary. I told Travis I hate this, because if we do budget for a full-time city recorder, I think Kim would probably take that job, because that's where her love is, that's what she was trained to do, but that would hurt the development services, so we have to figure something out there, so.
So you're really looking to hire development services?
We need a new position.
We've got that budgeted, so if we take a full-time recorder, then yeah. we would-
Could you make him the recorder? Make sure-
Well, I laid that up to her, but I think that's where she would lean.
I think we definitely always want to open it up.
Yeah, sure.
Right, Melanie?
Well, yeah.
Yes,
We
to
have
be
to.
fair,
Right.
open it up. So I hate to say somebody's always going to get the position. We have to open it up.
Well, it would depend if you're splitting an existing position into two, you wouldn't have to open one of the two positions.
She's already partly.
She's already in that position, all you're doing is removing, right? You wouldn't have to rehire both of those positions, is what I'm saying.
Just making her from part-time to full-time.
Do you have to, could you change the job description?
Yeah. I would imagine so. Melanie?
Is part-time
You're
versus
the expert.
full-time really a job description change?
You have to open
Change
up both
Sarah's
positions.
to only be finance,
Yeah,
and
you
then
have
that's, you would.
So I just have a question.
She's doing the same
What
job,
kind of
just
money
more.
do we have
She's a
to hire
part-time
people?
recorder, she's just doing
What's
that.
No, that's,
So it's kind of like,
Like the work she's already
we
doing.
need to know that because, I mean, we need to replace the people that we've been paying. There's not a problem, I mean, I don't have a problem with
No, yeah,
that.
of course not.
But until we bring in more income, I just don't know how we can afford to hire more people.
well, and that's why we're bringing this up, because if we feel like there's positions on here that we need,
If it can pay for itself, if they can pay for themselves, I still haven't, I don't think we're even close to what we're gonna get. I mean, to where we're gonna need all these extra people right now. If we're losing people, we need to replace them. There's not even a question there.
So-
But to me, if we don't have money to pay all these extra people, if we don't have the budget for it, how do we budget for it when we don't have the money to pay them?
That's property tax increase.
I know, but
is
we just
what
did
have
one
to
last
talk
year,
about.
and that's what I'm saying is, how much more money have we made this year than last year that would justify us hiring all these new people?
Right. There's no way we could afford all of these
No.
people, but I think as, from our end, we need to say, look, we're
If they're making
deficient.
money, I mean, I
Well-
can understand your position
And,
totally, because I think we can find you a place where they can,
work.
where they pay, you know, where they pay right here, which, and a full-time person, I totally agree with that, because I know when other people have called up there, they get really upset because
I think-
sometimes there's nobody there.
I think the key point is every department head is saying, here's a deficiency we see, and this is a way to meet that deficiency, and, you know, there's 20 of them there.
But
And-
how long can they go, you know,
Well,
it's like Tracy
right.
said, we're gonna give
We could go-
Greg this challenge of a year
You
and see
could-
how he does, and probably in a year and a half, we are probably gonna need more people if things
Right.
keep going the way they're going, and we can see that it's really exploding,
Right.
then we're gonna need more people, and we will
It's-
have more money coming in to pay that.
Right,
But
exactly.
if we don't have, it's like me, if I don't have the money, I don't go buy the equipment. I don't hire an extra person because where am I gonna get the money? I can't just say, oh, I'm gonna go get a loan to pay this person.
But at the same
If you
time,
knew
you
a
don't
college
leave
was coming
crops
into
rotting in
town
the
and they
field.
only
because
copier, wouldn't you hire people to handle the increased demand?
What did you say?
If you knew that the college was coming into town and you're the only copier in town, wouldn't you hire people to meet the increased demand? Or would you walk
I
all
would
those
still-
customers?
No, I would still have, well, I already have, you know, I have coverage plenty, I've always had that.
Well,
coverage plenty. But
but-
yes, I would hire somebody as soon as I saw, like, because mine's a day-to-day basis, so I see, okay, this is how much work's coming in, I'm gonna have to hire another person, but I know what I can afford. That's what I'm
Right.
saying, is I know what I can afford.
You know, there are some of those positions that if we don't fill them, we're gonna be behind the 8 ball. And
Well, I know
so,
that.
and the only way that we could do that before the retail tax comes in to pay for them is to raise the property tax. And, you know, if we have to do it twice, you know, in 2 years, then that's what we have
Well,
to
and
do.
what I'm looking at, and see, I don't have a problem with that, if, what kind of money are we bringing in? I guess that's what my question is where can we cut? This is how I look at it. If we're gonna pay more here, then we gotta cut someplace else. Where are we gonna cut someplace else to bring this?
That's the only problem. We can't cut anywhere else because we're short right now. You know, we've been short for a lot of years. So where do you cut if
We're
you,
still trying to catch up, and that's what I'm saying. Within a year and a half, I would think we should be catching up. Where, when they come and they say, I need this person, this is my income, this is how much more revenue I brought in, so now I can afford that person.
We have positions like mine, I don't bring in revenue.
No,
I
not hard-
don't.
nobody
No,
hardly brings
There's
in
no
revenue.
revenue source for me, so
And in fact, most of them
I'll always
bring-
say zero.
Travis brings in revenue.
The problem, the challenge we have is residential, we lose money on.
I know that.
But you need the residential so we can get
So
the
you can
commercial.
get the commercial,
But the
yes.
problem is if we don't have the staff to accommodate all this growth, then our level of service goes way down.
Well,
So-
and then we
in
get
some
to that,
departments
right?
too, it also goes back to perception of Payson. They're hard to work with, but are they hard to work with because they can't handle the demand? I mean, if you're turning people away or they're putting in their building plans and they don't get reviewed because we don't have people that can review them because they're reviewing all the other building plans, and so they say, well, heck with you, I'm going to Nephi.
That would be development services.
Well, but I know,
I know.
but you increase people, you increase police, you include, you know.
But at the same time,
I mean, some of things are right? So these are wish lists too, right? So these are all putting out their wish lists, and they know that we're probably not gonna be able to approve all of them, but we gotta work through this and figure out what the best scenario
It's
is.
a wish list, but I usually tell this to every council, it's like, I feel like it's our job, I won't speak for all of us, but it's my job to always ask for my departments, to always say, I need this, I need this, and I need this, and it's you guys' job to say yes or no.
Right.
And it's not personal, it's nothing, and as soon as I quit saying, I need this at the park, or this at the cemetery, or this at golf, then you probably should get a new guy or a lady to do my job. Because that's my whole job, is to just keep trying to make it better, and that's all of our jobs. And so then you guys look at this list and say, you know what, I can see where this goes. This one will work, and maybe this one won't in another year. This is overwhelming. Anytime we do any budget stuff, it's overwhelming to me because we put it all up there, and we can't afford, like Doug said, it's like millions and millions of dollars,
But some of it we can't afford not to do.
Absolutely.
Well,
yeah.
and that's what we're
Yeah,
working through
absolutely.
right here. And so some of them we are probably, we're gonna say no to.
So we can
Like Nestor last year, I mean, what a blessing.
Yeah.
You know, and that's probably helped you guys like considerably, you know, just
Right.
doing stuff that you guys weren't able to do.
But
I
part of doing that, we had to at least keep the tax rate the same.
Yeah.
We have to look at that every year. I mean,
But the new houses do bring in more money, which is always helpful, and there's a lot of them coming in. But I like to compare this to education, because that's where Doug and I think, right? We can do our job, we can teach 32 kids in a classroom, but if you've got us at 32, and you get a big onslaught of people moving in, all of a sudden our class numbers jump by 5. 37's too much. We can't do it, and that's where they're at. They're sitting at the max. What did you say?
I'd say that's a huge difference.
32 to
When you're at
35?
32 and you go to 37, that's...
That's why I have a class right now that somehow ended up really small, and they are 7 weeks ahead of last semester.
Yeah.
Because it is phenomenal the difference it makes when the staff is spread out and doing the job that they need to do. And that's what I'm looking at here, is they're saying, hey, we're looking that we might have 37 students. We need to start maybe planning on getting a couple more people. And so I think what we need to know right now is, what do you need? Is this stuff we need to approve today? Is this looking down the road? I think the garbage truck seemed to be a pretty pressing problem right now. If we can't remedy it the other way, let's. But
And I don't think that's what we're saying. We're saying, let's give it a shot for a year.
no, yeah, but that's just one position. There's 12, 14 positions on there.
so,
Well, he's not done either.
so, yeah.
So can I never got out.
Bottom of the list yet.
I had a question on the city recorder. I've been trying to ask for like 10 minutes. So could that be a part-time position? Because we're basically creating a new position. So couldn't the city recorder, if they're just doing that, be a part-time position?
We can sure look at that. That's been brought up, it's just you get somebody that.
Right.
They'll do it.
But
The report, you gotta stand.
I'm a recorder,
Melanie
Melanie's
has
a
a comment.
recorder, and Kim, and if you talk to them both, they'll say absolutely not, but I don't know, I really don't know.
if we're adding a half-time person, it's still taking
I can tell you
pressure off
now,
other people.
with the grammar requests that I've been getting in, I can't keep up with them, with the records filing that we're supposed to do, I'm not keeping up with that, like, there's so much that the city recorder does that I'm just not getting to, and Kim, she's one who keeps emailing and says, Dave, just so you know, I'm getting bombarded with development, I don't know how much longer I can keep doing the recorder duties as well, and I feel for her.
Yeah, the city of Riverside, and I did recorder duties for about 8 years, so I'm very familiar with the recorder area, and just as Sarah indicated, there are things right now that Kim and I, Sarah discussed, and from a liability standpoint too, that you might want to look at it. That's a critical position in the city that I think could help even with, you know,
I
with
think even
Dane.
Jill does city recorder duties, she
Yeah.
files a lot of pro notices,
It's kind of
Probably-
spread.
But the city recorder wouldn't do that for me.
it wouldn't file your notice, they wouldn't file your notices, oh, okay, sorry, see what I
You should have said yes, Jill.
It just won't happen.
Sarah's not gonna talk to you for a week.
No, I just,
Well, that's my point. There's some of these things we can't afford not to. The liability should be our,
Now, I need to know, yeah, what do they do? What is her job?
Well,
everything.
posting, all the grandma, the records requests that are going through,
the
again,
bids,
the
so,
bids, there's-
something that Kim brought up, she goes, you should be to every bid opening, and Esther told me that as well, and you should be keeping track of all the bids. I didn't know that, I had no idea, and then we started getting grandma requests that they want copies of all these bids, and I don't have them, so thank goodness Brent had them, so he sent them to me, but it's that kind of stuff that,
So job bids?
yeah, for big
Like-
projects.
Like our PI lines.
All the agreements, another thing that happened, the park committee,
Or
we're supposed to be
SCSD grant
keeping up,
requests.
we're supposed to keep track of all of our councils and park committees that we have.
Terms.
And it popped up on us. And it probably should fall under the recorder, but I don't have time to keep track of all these different councils that are out
Yeah,
there.
two of the park committee that expired, so we had it scrambled to go back posted.
So it's
Just a lot of things to keep track of.
and the liability issue, it comes down to grandma requests. Are we meeting,
So somebody requests something, we don't have the record, we get sued.
yeah.
Or the time,
And
or
like-
provide the record.
Yeah, and the timing and like the
Plus, all you're
contacts.
noticing and making sure that that person is gonna track all of that for the city. They're gonna make sure, technically, every meeting that you have, there should be minutes, and every committee meeting, and that's something that should be housed in the reporters.
And I wouldn't have brought it up, but Kim, she's emailed me and said, I'm just getting busier and busier with development services. I don't know how much longer I can keep doing both. And I said, because I don't want to bring it up, because it looks like I'm trying to take care of myself. And
Shirk your duties.
I would look at a part-time.
What's our building permits? 3 years ago it was how many houses? I saw them once, but it's like
47.
30, and last year was 250. What are we looking at projected this year? Is that all her
Well,
duties?
3 years ago, that 40 was probably single-family homes.
Yeah,
It
that was
wasn't,
like total.
it was,
Yeah, what
3
was
years ago,
single
we had
family
like
last
less
year?
than 50.
I think we had a lot of remodels and stuff, but we could find.
Well, yeah,
out.
and not counting remodels.
But I'm just saying that her workload,
It's not that
you
big
can
of
look
a-
at those numbers and they're obvious. They are not state level, and it's going.
Well, you have an election this year as well.
Yeah, and not to mention with all the ranked choice voting stuff that's going on and the changes.
Is this re-election for you guys this year?
Yeah.
There are a lot of growing pains, and Payson City's done this over time, and I'm not saying it's good or bad, it's what we've been able to do with the budgets we have. But we combined, just like Mark's district, we combined 2 superintendent jobs. When Jeanette was the recorder, she focused on the recorder duties, and the finance kind of suffered a little. Now we've got Sarah, that our finances are being taken care of at the recorder duties, so it's just, but we've combined those, and most cities don't do that anymore. Spanish Fork still does, but Kent Clark's the recorder, but he doesn't do any recorder duties. They have 2 or 3 people underneath him to take care of those duties. He's the finance guy at the CTA as well, so he does the finance stuff as what it is. You're the recorder.
Santa Quinn has their own recorder, Salem has the finance and the recorder combined.
So in Santa Quinn, how many planners do they have in their, like how many engineers like we have?
2 engineers.
Santa Quinn has 3 people that do my job.
Oh, yeah, 3. Yeah, that does Travis's, and then there's 1 planner.
It's just what we've done in the past. Travis has 3 hats. Kent has 3 hats. In a perfect world, we ought to have a person for each of those to make sure the jobs get done. So I'm not saying it's just what we've had to do with the budgets we've had over
Right, and that comes from a history of not raising taxes when we need to raise them. It reaches a point where if we have to do it every year for 5 years, we gotta do that.
Well, I think this council and the previous council did a good job of at least considering it every year. Because I think you need to look at all aspects, whether it's utility fees, doing a consumer price index increase that's very small, or looking at the tax, if you just keep the rate the same, or you raise it a little bit. I think it's wise for the council to look at all these options. And, we looked at this as a group of department heads, and, I circled the ones, the contract ones I think we can do with the budgets we have, not impacting the budget. I circled the school resource officer, because school district's going to pay half of that. No, it's not on here. The landfill operators, the equipment that we just ordered, that's not on this list, but that was kind of somewhat approved. We're budgeting into that. But other than that, there was really nothing else. Something that's not up here that's on my board in there. But we don't know if we're going to make this work. But the hospitals asked for the police to take care of their security. So we're looking at taking care of that. It would be 3 additional officers, but most of it would be down with them.
And they're paying for them?
Well, they would pay for the bulk, but we'd have to pay, it's like 2.7 officers, so we'd have to pay for a 0.3 on some of the equipment. We're trying to work out an agreement that goes over 18 months, so Kevin has enough leeway for a 2-year period to pay $500,000, but it's a little bit more than that. But if we can do it in an 18-month period, he might have the funds to cover the bulk of that. So we'll bring that to you if we can work that out. But again, it doesn't help our streets patrol, but maybe there'd be some benefit because we're down there a lot anyway.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah, that wasn't up there, but we're looking at that. I told Kevin I'd try to have a draft out to him this week, but I haven't got there yet.
What would .3 be for us?
I can't remember.
So
0.3 would be
what's the?
maybe 40,000.
I think it was like 27,000.
And there's some equipment and stuff like that that would need to help you purchase. So we're looking at that too, but otherwise, you know, we can add some of this in there, but we would have to find a way. We have had increased sales tax, we've had increased property tax, but we've also got increased costs, you know, the health insurance, the other insurances are going up as well. So we'd have to look and see how we deal with that. And I know Melanie, I'll throw it out since we're talking, but Melanie's asked our consultant to look at other medical health insurance options. And we can get it cheaper, but it would be going away from Mountain View Hospital. And I don't know, the previous councils haven't wanted to do that because they're in our city.
I think we possibly stay with Mountain View, we stay with Mountain View because it's something we can build a community around, and it has been.
I will say this on the insurance, this is the first year in the 5 years I've been here, I've had tons of claims that are out of network. Because you go to the hearing doctor and the doctor's covered but not the hearing test. And it's been a challenge because, you know, we have a $5,000 out of pocket max. I've already spent over $6,000 out of pocket. So I'm not saying we should hose our hospital, but it's something we should look at because it's affecting us as, you know, all of the users if we can't use our own hospital because they charge us more.
Can you negotiate with the hospital at all?
Nope. Once you go the bill, the
No, I'm not talking about you. That's what I'm wondering is, are there any insurance companies out there that negotiate with the hospital themselves?
The hospital's own insurance companies, or vice versa.
Well, I think
But don't think it's always greener on the other side of the fence because we're with IHC this year, and I would love to go back the other direction. I think it's cost me a fortune.
Well, I think once we get some proposals back, that was my thought. We got to go to the hospital and say, look, you can go to Revere and get an MRI for $700, and you can go to the hospital and it costs $6,000. And so there's, you know, they encourage us through these HSA and through everything to shop and go around. But if you're stuck and you have to go to the hospital and it's, I can't remember what the MRI was, but it was like 5
I
or
think
6 times.
it's 3,000 versus 500.
Yeah.
That's why I still walk around with a limit.
And that makes it hard when you have to pay it out of
MRI.
pocket to say, well,
Because our employees are trying to look at stewards, and they're, you know, they're trying to use those cost calculators and go in, but
Yeah.
they're finding as they try to do it, as Dave indicated, that sometimes.
That one doesn't count in the network, it's an out-of-network expense.
I think we need to go to Kevin and the hospital administration, say, look,
Hey,
you
we've
know,
got to do something here.
yeah, we're in your network and we want to be with you, but we have to pay $3,000 out of pocket. We can go to Revere for $500.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I think we should look at it, there's no two ways about it, but if we can support Mountain View, that's what we need to. But we need to look at it.
They're in the business just like we are.
Yep.
And they should be willing to work.
anyway, we talked a lot about employees. We can try to input some of these in and kind of show you where the downfall is or the shortfall. The hardest part on all these employees are the general fund ones, because general fund, you know, we have sales tax and property tax, but to your point, Teresa, we don't, those are non-generating revenues.
Yes, I realize
The
that.
police, the fire, the administration, even a lot of development services. Now, we're getting building permits, so that helps with certain things, but it doesn't cover the ongoing expenses. So,
our impact fees are pretty much with everybody else now.
We're lower than a lot of the surrounding communities.
Well, that's what I'm wondering is why aren't we, I mean, I realize that we're supposed to only charge what we're, is some law that we can charge more than that, so that we have something, like if something breaks down, we have a little bit of money in there to go take care of it?
Those impact fees are restricted on what they can be used for.
So
They
development
can only be
fees,
used for new development that's due to new growth, so projects for new growth.
So if we needed new infrastructure somewhere, so that's what I'm saying is, how do ours compare to other cities, and is that what they're using their money for? Well, I'm sure they are, because like over in Spanish Fort, they took some of their money and did some of the infrastructure and didn't make the developers do it, you know, and then they paid into it as they developed. So that's probably where they got their money from, right? From, you know, that's what I'm wondering is,
Just
If
an
we need to
FYI,
adjust
on
it.
that note, last year, we had 178 building permits issued. Spanish Fork had 474. So.
how many does
that-
Sanford have?
Probably 138 or, yeah, 138.
And what
And
did Salem have?
178,
They had 202 the year before.
89 is what Salem had.
But those would be just houses, not apartments?
I don't know.
So it was
These are
168?
just, this is
Oh,
just
yeah.
a graph, you can't distinguish, but anyway, just so you're aware, that's a lot of different revenue that you can do stuff with.
Because you look, we get less than $200 per house on property tax.
Well, no, it's ridiculous.
So I mean, you look at, that's why I said residential loses us money,
yeah, it costs
but
the
you
city
have to
money.
have it. So, you know, that's why we have to look at all these different pockets of money, like Sarah said, because, you know, for property tax, we don't get anything off residential. Obviously, we don't pay our way as homeowners to the services
Well,
we
it's
use.
like my crowd pays $1.3 billion a year on their taxes. I mean, wouldn't that be great to have something like that? I'm sure Costco probably, well, Costco, I don't get
I
back
think
some
we
of
have a
theirs.
water issue in my province. Not burst your bubble, but they use serious
Well,
water.
so that's what I'm wondering too, is how much are these pharmaceutical companies using? Because I went and pulled out, and so she was saying that a normal household uses maybe like 5 times 1,000, like 5,000 gallons or 6,000 gallons a month.
I thought it was 125,000 gallons a year is the average.
Yeah, so whatever she said, you know, and so then she pulled up what one of them was using, and it was like quite a bit.
So did you go through them all, Dave?
Yeah, these are all the ones that were listed.
The city recorder, that was the,
You're only on page 1.
There's no,
that's
no-
22 new positions. So like you said, you're shooting for the stars.
well, we're just showing you the need.
Prioritize where you're at,
all.
and let's see if Sarah can make a budget for it, and we'll go.
Let's start putting some of these in the budget.
And just so you know, I'm all for truth and taxation, at least keep our mill levy the same, so I think that.
Other cities are starting to look at that as well. I had an
Standard
email from the
procedure.
city manager group that wanted to know who's done the truth and taxation the last year to keep the tax the same, tax rate the same. So I sent them an email, but you just have to look at it every year. We didn't do it for so many years and we got behind. It's just
I mean, that's not bad, but
keep it up.
We've never really, when we kept the mill levy the same, there's never hardly been anything said about it. It's when we tried to increase it
Yeah.
above that.
25%.
Yeah. But other than that, we've never really had much comment on it.
we didn't do 25%.
No, we didn't.
But we needed to put that level
That's
there
right.
so we could go up.
Yeah.
Yeah, we left it there in case we needed to.
You can settle in to consider, which. Okay, do you want to talk about anything else budget-wise? Before, the only other thing we have is a closed session.
So I got one thing just to throw out there on the employees. At some point in time, I think if we're gonna have a museum and have our center there for for tourism, where they can come in and get information, we're gonna probably have to hire part-time, at least keep it open on Saturdays, because if they can't go in there on Saturdays when people are coming through there, and we wanna be tourism, adventure and all that, it's gotta be open on Saturdays.
And that's when most people are off.
Right. So just something to think for in the future.
Volunteers, no. We tried a couple months of volunteerism on Saturday because we've been pushing that a little bit, and I think a summer months last year, or they did September maybe, or something like that.
They did summer, but they're just getting harder and harder for them to keep that open at all. Because of this, they're getting
Okay, so we're gonna move on to the closed session.
So moved.
So moved. Seconded.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're in closed session.